I want to call this meeting to order, the June 22nd, 2017 Reston Association Board of Directors meeting. Quorum is met, so we can get started. Just like we did in May, I would just want to open up with some remarks before we actually get into our agenda. Before we actually get started tonight, I just want to, on behalf of this board, and I'm sure everybody in our community, express our condolences to the friends and family of Nabra Hassanin. I didn't want to get that wrong. I think, through a tragedy like this, it makes us all kind of reflect on our own actions, and hopefully we think about how we interact with each other, and we do that with respect and compassion always. No matter what the conversation is, it's always done with respect and compassion. So I hope we can continue to reflect on that as the days go by. The other thing I wanted to offer is to say that tomorrow is the beginning of season 3 of our pool season. So we are in full swing starting tomorrow, and also on Monday our camps begin. So I think we can officially call it summer in Reston now. Certainly can by the weather. We do have one more listening session. We've done 4. We have one more to pick up the people that couldn't come to one of the other ones. It's next week on the 28th at 7 o'clock here at Reston headquarters, and some of our at-large folks, I think, are going to facilitate that, along with Victoria, who's the one that thought it was a great idea to do yet another one. So she's in for facilitating as well. So let's see. Then after that listening session, the board is going to spend the summer looking at budgets, and we're going to have some additional training. We have a lot of new board members. And we're going to be spending time taking in everything you guys told us about what's important to you and what your priorities are, and seeing if we can make that a reality within our budget cycle for 2018 and 19. The other thing I wanted to bring up is we do have openings on some very critical committees that we would like some volunteers to come out for. That would be our Covenants Committee, our DRB. We're looking for a layperson, right, Kate? A layperson? Yep. Our Fiscal Committee has several openings, as well as our Elections Committee. So if you're interested in any of those, you can contact Sabrina or go onto our website, and all the information is there. We certainly would like to see applications coming in soon, because some of these interviews and stuff we would like to do in July, because we have openings that we need to fill. So if you or somebody you want to recruit to come in and be on one of our committees, please do that. I did want to let you know that we are going to have another executive session this evening, and that is for council and for us to talk about what some of our legal options may be on our short-term rentals, to see if we as a board think that we need to do some changes or not, and so we'll be giving instruction and instruct our attorney on which way we want to go on that. So I just want to let everybody know that we will be going to executive session at the end of the meeting. The other thing I want to remind you is last board meeting, we did get out, I think, on time, if not real close to on time, and we want to try to do that again tonight. And so what I'm asking of anybody that has signed up to speak, which I don't have the list, keep it to the 3 minutes unless you're representing a group, and then you can have 5. I will say, if you're talking about a specific topic and the person before you has said the very same thing you want to say, it might well be sufficient for you to get up and say, I agree with Mr. So-and-so, and I might have another point, or I might not. But we don't necessarily need to hear the same thing over and over. We've gotten lots of emails over the last month on lots of topics, so we've heard a lot of what people have said. Don't want to take away your opportunity to speak. You absolutely have your 3 minutes. But just for sake of time, if you could give us a ditto, which also tells us your opinion on whatever the topic is. So I ask you to help us stay on task and on target. Like we did last month. We did really well. So with that, before we get to the agenda, which is item B, I would already like to make an addition right before we get into the discussion. I would like for John Mooney has written, and the board has looked at, a resolution that commemorates the Fairfax County anniversary that just happened. And so I'm going to ask John to read that, and then we will take a vote as a board. So we need to add that to item.
New item D.
New item.
Right after item C, possibly?
Right after item C. How about that? Yeah.
Okay.
So with that.
Let's move the agenda.
Yep.
Okay.
With the modification.
Yep.
Yeah. So without objection, can we move the agenda with that slight modification?
Yep.
Okay. So now on to the consent calendar. Several items on that, as you can see. Can we
Move to accept the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So now we're on to the new item D. So John, I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind reading the resolution that was prepared. Thank you for doing that.
Sherry. Board resolution honoring Fairfax County's 275th birthday. Its 275th birthday on June 17, 2017. And whereas, as described by Chairman Sharon Bulova, Fairfax County has increasingly striven from its rough colonial origins to the present day to become a more just and inclusive community that serves the common good. And whereas the Reston Association, along with all the other communities within Fairfax County, is grateful that the government of Fairfax County has endeavored to foster outstanding economic development, schools, parks, and recreation facilities, other public infrastructure, housing, transportation systems, human services, environmental stewardship, and cultural opportunities for its citizens. And whereas the Reston Association in particular is grateful for Fairfax County's courageous and innovative 1962 adoption of planned residential community zoning that enabled the realization of the Reston vision of Robert E. Simon, Jr. Now therefore be it resolved that the Reston Association Board of Directors, on behalf of its members, celebrate the history of Fairfax County and express its gratitude for the government services that the county continues to provide. And be it further resolved that the Reston Association Board of Directors renews its commitment to collaborate with Fairfax County officials for the common good of the entire county in a manner that preserves and advances the Reston vision.
Thank you.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, John, for that. So now we are going to move into member comments, and we have several. We do have some that were emailed in because some folks couldn't be here, and they will become part of the record. So we will go on to Alfredo? I can't read that.
Oh, yes.
Okay, come on, your turn.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. We just need your name and address.
Yes, it's Alfredo Diaz and 11450 North Shore Drive.
You said it much better than I said it. Just put it on the record. Your own name, I mean. That was nice.
Thank you. I have a couple of things. First of all, I think it's great that we have a restaurant within the county of Fairfax, which is one of the wealthiest counties in the United States. And that means there's budget available, and the restaurant has grown so much with so many building and construction, we're going to have a flow of capital for the community. However, there are a couple of things I'm really much concerned, and it's called the Reston Regional Library. The Reston Regional Library has become pretty much like a homeless shelter, okay? I know annexed to it, there's a homeless shelter for 30 individuals. But I think there's an abuse from this population coming into the library and using the library as a shelter. Sometimes you go into the restroom of the library and there are guys there shaving and cleaning their hands and feet and whatsoever. And the condition of the restroom is not very clean. They usually populate the computers. And as you know, they probably get a library card because they have a resident, which is next door. And of course, as you know, when you go to a public library, you can sit directly into a computer and log in yourself with a library card. So you see the same individuals on the same computers a lot of times. Now, these individuals, they don't wear nice, clean clothes like most decent person does. I'm not saying they are indecent because of the condition, but nevertheless, the library is supposed to enhance knowledge and bring an environment so you can bring your kids and yourself to inhale yourself about knowledge. Well, I don't think that's occurring at the Reston Regional Library. I think the county, along with the city, needs to do something about. There has people being died and the bus stops across the parking lot from the library. The bus stop across from the parking lot from the library has become sheltered. There's people sleeping there. Down the road, there's a police station, but I don't know if they can remove them or not, but what I'm saying is it's an ambience. It's not the most ideal ambience, but something has to be done. It's this community is growing. They're going to have a lot of the population who fill those buildings, and the regional library is going to be a shelter for the homeless. I don't think that's something that the community wants. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
And the other one is the Lake Ann Plaza. The little mini marina needs to have some life preserved with cords. There's a lot of kids there on the weekends, and they hang around the platform of the marina, and if they fell off, and they know how to swim, and probably the adults know how to swim, at least there is a life preserver that can be thrown out to the kids. There's nothing around, and that's a safety issue. That's all what I have.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Paul Stridler?
Yes, good evening. My name is Paul Stidler. I live at Sentinel Point Court here in Reston. I have two matters I'd like to address. One is on the issue of the vacant board seat. I would urge you to appoint Ben Iyer to that position. I've had the opportunity to get to know Ben over recent months. He is a fiscally responsible businessman. He is a hard worker. He cares very deeply about this community. He nearly won the last election that was held. It would seem to be a unnecessary waste of money to hold another election, given that the people spoke very clearly about that recently. And I would urge that he be appointed to join the board. One of the reasons I really like Ben is that he has a very clear position about the parking situation at the Reston Town Center, which I also spoke with you about last month, urging that a resolution be adopted on that. I'm very glad to hear tonight about the resolution supporting Fairfax County, and would respectfully submit that if a resolution supporting Fairfax County's history and government can be put forward, one can be put forward to protect and support the merchants and people of Reston who are being hit so hard by this parking cost. Since last month, there have been two notable developments. Boston Properties has backed down, providing a free hour of parking and making parking available after 4 o'clock. They did that shortly, about 2 days before a court ruling by a Fairfax County judge regarding a lawsuit that Jackson's had brought. The judge was very strident in imposing an injunction against any Jackson's patrons having to pay for the parking. His language was very clear and very direct against Boston Properties. But what's the parking tax that, or the parking fees that are in place are an onerous regressive tax on Restonians. And they affect everybody in the community. They impede the ability of some folks, especially the elderly, the poor, and those who are just starting to work, to go to the town center and to be able to come there. It literally puts up a barrier in our community. And it is completely unnecessary. Boston Properties has profited handsomely in Reston, and good for them. They get a tremendous amount of money in rent and other fees from their tenants. But it really strikes of corporate greed if you look at Boston Properties' own words and their underlying motivation for the parking tax. In 2011, on an analyst call, Raymond Ritchie of the company said, in referring to Reston, "This is one of my favorite parts. We still got 800 parking spaces out there that we have no value on. So if we just charge $4 a day per space, we'll get $8 million a year." For the record, they charge $4 for 3 to 4 hours of parking, and 2 to 3 times that. So we can conservatively estimate by their own numbers that $16 million a year is going out from the Reston community to the shareholders of Boston Properties in places like Boston and elsewhere, on top of already high rents and property appreciating values.
Paul, if I could get you to conclude?
Yes, merchants are being hurt, Restonians are being hurt. I urge the board to weigh in with a strong resolution that will go a long way toward taking Boston Properties down the road that it should go down, and which is fair for all the people of Reston.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you. Ed Abbott.
Good evening. My name is Ed Abbott.
I know we know your address, but could you just say it for the record,
Yeah, I
please? Okay. Oh, you getting there?
I'll get there.
Sorry.
Thank you. I live at 2218 Wake Robin Lane. I represent Reston Recall. Reston Recall is dedicated to replacing those members of the RA board that supported the Tetra fiasco using a recall referendum. That, as you know, is complicated and time-consuming. In the end, our efforts, along with others, in supporting new candidates and insisting that Director Thompson comply with the conflict of interest rules, have resulted in the change we wanted. I believe the new board will not allow a mistake such as Tetra to reoccur. Therefore, there is no reason to continue with Reston Recall, so I have removed the Reston Recall website and the Facebook page. Finally, I want to make it clear that my complaints about Director Thompson were solely for her ethical failures. Her failures and conflict of interest go back at least 2 years. These include signing conflict of interest statements that were clearly false. She could have easily complied with the conflict of interest rule, but for whatever reason, didn't. In a recent Connection article, Ms. Thompson said my complaints were just a kerfuffle between us. This was not a minor disagreement between an RA member and a sitting director. My complaints went to the heart of the problem the previous board had with ethical behavior. She also seemed to indicate they had nothing to do with her recent resignation. Her timing of her resignation shortly after my second complaint was filed indicates otherwise. Since she has resigned, I have withdrawn the complaints. Also, anyone who thinks my complaints against Director Thompson were based on being mean, vindictive, or just to make trouble are seriously wrong. My complaints were based on a comparison of her actions against the rules of this association and nothing more. Going forward, this board must not repeat her mistakes or the mistakes related to the Tetra fiasco. I believe you won't. Although I have closed down Reston Recall, I will continue to monitor and evaluate the board's actions. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ed. Connie.
So, hey, Connie Hartke, 2201 Quartermaster Lane, Reston. I'm here to speak about item J, Covenants Committee Appeal Request by Adrian Hollins regarding a much-loved, well-cared-for pontoon boat named Orca. I am requesting that you hear the appeal. Paul and I, my husband, Paul and I live on Lake Audubon, me for 13 years and Paul for over 30. Orca has resided here approximately 20, about the same number of years as our 18-foot boat named Shenandoah. Forgive me, I come from an area where we name our boats. They have personalities. Indications are that the 18-foot rule, this is about the 18-foot rule and Orca is 20 feet. Indications are that the 18-foot rule was enacted when Lake Ann was the only lake in Reston. I believe there are no records to explain how the size limitation was determined almost 50 years ago. It is time for a refresh of this rule on the larger lakes. Lake Ann, upon which the rule was made, is almost half the size of Lake Audubon. Lake Ann is 27 acres, Audubon is 44, Thoreau is 40. I assure you that nobody would think Orca is larger than our 18-foot Shenandoah without putting them side by side and pulling out the tape measure? And if we did prove this to someone, the response would be, so what? For our lake, this is an irrelevant rule. So I ask, what can we, the Lake Audubon community, who wants Orca to stay, do to help if you choose to hear the appeal next month? Is it more signed petitions? The Covenants Committee received 38 signed paper petitions, very targeted to Audubon residents. It wasn't, everyone in the community. It was targeted. This was done over spring break when I was out of town, and so not available to help this boat whom we support. At the time, I thought of starting an online petition, but knew that to be effective, it needed to be targeted to the lakefront properties. And that's very hard to control when the petition's online. Had I been in town so to speak, we are not a city nor a town, I would have helped Mr. Hollins with his paper effort, but I was out of town. Should you choose to hear the appeal next month, perhaps emails would be a compromise between paper and online petitions. I propose that we advise our lake neighbors. I will help Mr. Hollins, and others will help get the word out, specifically to those who live around the lake and whatever clusters have lake rights. Perhaps someone could help us with that. I propose that we advise our lake neighbors to send to a specific board address that you designate with a specific subject line. And then people can say they support or they don't support or they could care less. But it would give you something to go on should you choose to hear it, the appeal next month. So in conclusion, when you get to item J tonight, I hope you will allow the appeal and provide some direction on what we should do to prepare.
Thanks, Connie.
Thank you.
Just in case you need this for reference, when you come to item J, and I'll email this in later.
Thanks, Connie.
Mike Collins.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. My name is Mike Collins. I'm at 11820 Great Owl Circle. I came to comment on the open board seat. Excuse me. I just wanted to encourage you to recognize that, especially in the last year or so, you've seen this community clamoring for more openness and transparency. I think you should keep that in mind when you choose whatever process you're going to choose to fill the seat. I realize it's entirely at your discretion on how that goes about, but keep that in mind. I think we saw that in the last election quite a bit. Some people campaigned on that issue, as a matter of fact. So I hope you will keep that in mind. Now, as has been suggested, if you choose solely based on previous election results, you may come to regret that decision. And that's not about any of the previous candidates. I said publicly that I thought any of the people who ran for the at-large seat were certainly qualified to do the job and had their heart in the right place and would do a good job in position. It's not about me. I don't know if I'm going to throw my hat in the ring yet. There are certain members of my family who'd rather I didn't. So, but assure you, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the precedent that you could set going forward. There could be a time when the next few people down the list in their election results are not people who have their heart in the right place and are not, frankly, suited or even qualified to serve on the board. We have had candidates run for positions who would fail to meet that test by a long shot. If you want to use it as a criteria when you make your decision through an application process, great. I think that's fine, and that's perfectly respectable. But it shouldn't be the only criteria. And then finally, when you do have a process, and I hope it's an open application process, I would suggest something that hasn't been done before, I don't think, is an open forum where the community members can ask questions of the candidates. I think that's great for openness and transparency and community involvement. And I think, it would be a qualifier. You need to have people on this board who are willing to sit before the public and answer questions and state what their position and knowledge is on things. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Steve?
I am Stephen Canna at 1417 Belcastle Court, and I speak to you tonight as a concerned resident. And I wanted to draw your attention to a press release issued by Reclaim Reston, which has been sent to all of you as individual members of this board, and it has been also sent to the members of the Board of Supervisors, and it proposes a moratorium on all new investments, not those that have been already approved, but new investments on and the proposed zoning ordinance, until we see a solid commitment from the county to commit resources for the necessary infrastructure to support that development. We're not against development, but we think it has to be, I think it has to be a balanced growth. The Reclaim Reston has issued this press release. They've established a website so that the community can learn more about what's going on in this area. We have written to the supervisors and we have written to you. We all, you and all these people here and many more people who are on vacation, we take massing, density, commercial development, supportive infrastructure, the Reston way of life very seriously, as we know you do as well. The Reston deed is quite clear on page 10 that development and infrastructure should be in sync. That's a shorthand way of what the 4 or 5 lines say, but it's quite clear. But regrettably, we don't see this being in sync right now. So we appreciate, I appreciate the efforts that you have taken at St. John's Wood and your press release calling for the planning and zoning people to post the answers to the questions that were asked at the 2 Reston hearings. I don't know if they have done so yet. I haven't had a chance to get onto the website. It's kind of rather difficult. But I don't think that's quite enough just to ask for the answer to the questions. I think it's time to step up your game a bit to meet the challenges of balanced growth and to keep our infrastructure in sync with this growth. Help us, all the residents of Reston, to retain the Reston way of life by enforcing the RAD that calls for development for infrastructure to be in sync with commercial development. Help us to grow Reston in a balanced way. Help us to maintain the integrity of the RAD by declaring a moratorium on new development until we see a solid commitment of the county for supportive infrastructure expenditure for roads, parks, schools, public utilities, police, what have you. Help us achieve these goals, and surely you will earn the goodwill of the community. Thank you very much.
Bruce.
I'm Bruce Ramo. I'm 11562 Hemingway Drive. I want to underscore both the statement by Steve and the letter that we've sent to the board, how significant it is to step up and express to the county the challenge that they're presenting to our community by moving forward with development pace and clearly saying to us that without question infrastructure will lag. We have no other forum, local forum, to speak for our community, and that's why there's a petition online. 100 people a day have signed up since that petition went online. 100 Restonians a day since that petition went online to express their support of a moratorium. And what do we mean by a moratorium? Do we want to stop all development? No. What we would like to stop is the zoning change and development that is not yet in the pipeline. We have plenty of room in the headroom in the current density limitation to allow time for infrastructure to be caught up before we change and increase the headroom. If we take our hand off the spigot of density, we will have no control. We will have no opportunity as a community to impact the safety, the health, the daily lifestyle that makes Reston, Reston. So the community's reaching out to this group to support that moratorium. We heard tonight a statement to the county which is supportive of some of the things that they've done. But in this instance, we need a statement to the county that says, please work with us. Please do not let the development exceed the ability of the community to absorb it and support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Melissa?
I decline.
Okay. Anybody else that didn't sign up but wishes to speak? Tammy?
Tammy Petrine, 2503 Foxcroft Way. I am here just to say, please, I did not know that Reclaim was going to be here and speaking. I would like to tell you that Reston 2020 is putting out another paper. It is, from what I have seen, short, concise, relative to the complexity of how density will drastically affect our community if we're complacent and we allow this zoning change to occur. When that comes out, I assume that it will go, you will get a copy, Reston now probably, so that it can be online and get a large. Please spread this around. It is the most comprehensive. There are probably 9 points in addition to what Bruce and Steve have mentioned. It is incredibly important that we band together in alliance of all Reston associations and make a clear voice that we cannot afford this zoning change. It will be disastrous. I wish you good luck on filling the spare seat. Thank you so much for everything you do and all the time you put in.
Yes, ma'am.
Jean Basterling, 1467 Churchill Place. Just a correction. Bruce said there were 100 signatures, and there are 369 signatures.
Thank you. Ben?
Good evening. Ben Nair, 1531 Inlet Court. To the Board of Directors, I was the runner-up in a 6-person race for the at-large seat on the RA Board by 117 votes less in a race that saw 8,534 votes. I received 2,376 votes. Eric Carr received 2,493 votes. That's just a difference of a little over 1%. This election happened only 2 short months ago. Now, Eve Thompson, another at-large director, has resigned, and I ran for the at-large director's seat. To fill this open position, the board is considering a process where they could end up nominating anyone they want. So I want to put before the board the following. We just had an election regarding the at-large seat. I campaigned an entire election month on a strong platform, met with thousands of voters, attended debates, participated in numerous RA meetings, also after the elections, advanced positions on RA issues, and gave opinions on RA news and video articles. My message was vetted and then supported in large numbers by members of the Reston community, as seen in the turnout. It is possible that the reason for the recent resignation was an issue that in many ways was ripe during the election 2 months ago. If Eve Thompson had resigned before the election, I would have won this new seat that has opened up by vote totals, just as if there had been 2 at-large seats open at that time. Note that there's not a full-term seat. It ends when the next election cycle begins in January 2018. For a board that made transparency and fair play its cornerstones, after recent lessons learned, it would seem logical to appoint the recent candidate who came in a very close second in lieu of handpicking a candidate who either received fewer votes or is an outsider to the election. In the June 12th Board Operations Committee meeting, you also discussed appointing the treasurer for the empty board seat, who also is an outsider to the election and who was nominated by you to serve as the treasurer in the first place. In the past week, you have received several emails from Restonians supporting my positions. Hence, I request the board and Madam President for the following. In your agenda, I'll just be 30 seconds. In your agenda, I request you consider a motion to vote in for the MT at-large seat board, the runner-up of the 2017 RA at-large race, based on vote count as the democratically elected board member. It is only fair, by having this motion on the floor, that Restonians will hear from you as to why or why not this should or should not be the case, before you handpick a candidate who has either received fewer votes or is an outsider to the election. Thank you.
Anyone else? Before we move on, Patty, at the last board meeting, you asked about the conflict of interest statements. I wanted to tell you that they are all current and they are all on the website. So, there you go.
I did check the other day, it was there.
They were there, right?
Well, no.
Oh, well, they are there now. Okay. Okay, so
everyone.
we're moving on to the audit financial statements.
You ready for it?
We're ready.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ashley Reynolds. I'm the audit manager for the financial statement audit here at Reston. I'm filling in for Lori Yarman, the audit partner, sends her apologies. So if you all want to turn to page 36, just go through the results of the audit. And so we have substantially completed all of the audit test work and expect to issue a unmodified, which in accounting terms is a clean opinion, tomorrow after your approval. As usual, and in all past years, we've had great cooperation from management. Everything that we asked for is freely available. In terms of adjustments that arose as a result of our procedures, we did have one past adjustment. No corrected adjustments. A past adjustment is just an adjustment that, while we found it and deemed it not to be clearly trivial, we did propose it and it was passed upon. But I can say that one past adjustment for an audit is really great results. Usually there are many more. As part of our audit procedures, we are required to obtain an understanding of the internal control processes at the association. While we don't actually opine on those procedures, we do take note of what's working well, what's not working so well. So we do have 3 recommendations that arose, and mainly they arose because of the implementation of ADP during the year, kind of, brought to light some controlled processes that weren't working as well as they could be. And that is just accurate and timely input of employee data into the various payroll-related data systems, reasonableness checks of hours for hourly employees, particularly seasonal, where you're not used to seeing the same hours come through each payroll period, and then just detail review and approval of hours to ensure that they exist are accurate as reported. In the prior year, we had made 4 recommendations, and we're happy to say that of those, 3 have been fully implemented, and the 4th one is in process and is expected to be finalized in the coming months. So that's really great news. On the next page, just in terms of our audit objective, we like to remind that audit procedures require us to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance. So we do test things on a sample basis, and we're not looking at 100% of every transaction that occurred during the year. And that is in accordance with generally accepted accounting standards in the United States. And also just to mention that our audit does not relieve management and those charged with governance of those responsibilities. And at the end of the audit, we do have management representation letter signed stating that management is responsible for the financial statements as a whole. On the next page is a brief overview of the changes in the financial statements from last year to this year. Investments, 2016 was a lot better year for investments, so mainly that increase is just due to market. Property and equipment, while there was 1.8 million in fixed asset additions, there was 1.6 in depreciation expense, so it was only about $170,000 increase. Otherwise, notes payable went down due to payments on the Tetra Lake House loan made during the year. And then in terms of the statement of revenue and expenses, homeowners assessments increased around 3% due to the 3% increase in the assessment per unit. The Lake House contribution revenue decreased by the $650 due to no similar contributions occurring in 2016. In expenses, there is a new expense program, the land use, which saw an increase from prior year. And overall, there was excess revenue over expenses of almost $700,000, $693,000. On the next page is just a summary of the high-level items that we consider when performing the audit. So we look at the accounting policies, the practices, significant estimates used, unusual transactions, the presentation and disclosures included in the financial statements, and ensure that all of those are in accordance with GAAP. And we noted no issues at all, and it overall was a very successful audit, and we thank Robert and everyone for their great cooperation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Any general comments? I look to either Eric, you and fiscal committee, or treasurer. Thoughts, comments? Make
No,
sense of
we
what all
went
she
through
just
this
said.
in heavier detail at the fiscal committee, and the committee was very satisfied with the audit.
So the only comment that I would make is that, I didn't find it here, but there is an internal control, statement from BDO. I just want to clarify that that's only on the financial reporting. It's not on the processes. It's not on, how something was done, whether the adequacy or the appropriateness of the controls that are in place away from the financial reporting. The one comment that I would point out, that if you were to see the public documents, you'll see in the quality of the association's financial reporting is the third bullet on significant unusual transactions. I don't know if you expanded on what I asked that you do, but basically BDO had identified the Lake House transaction as something that's unusual, not in the normal course of what the Reston Association typically does, but of course they had a referendum to get the public's approval about that.
Yes,
So
we
that's
expanded
moving
on that in the fiscal committee presentation, and the language reads exactly the same as what I've put on the last page of our report in your board packets. So it just explains that while we consider it unusual due to the infrequent nature of the transactions, and ensuring that we look at it with a more detailed attention for things like disclosures and compliance with U.S. GAAP.
And what we do see in the goals that we're getting ready to talk about later down the line is that some of those creation of those internal controls that some of them came out of Stone Turn and just best practices, and we're hoping to have that audited next year. So next year we have both the financial and the control piece
and the
in
full
18
control environment
for 18.
built in. That's right.
Yeah. For 18,
That is right.
so-
But otherwise, the financial statements are good. Well done.
Yep.
Congratulations to the team.
John.
Just one question. Will the board have an opportunity to go over the audited financial statements with the fiscal committee? I don't know what the practice is. Do we do that, or?
Typically.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Not that I know of.
Right.
Typically, it is the fiscal committee receives, asks questions as they have, they're usually participating in the audit early, at the onset, throughout the audit process. If there are any questions from the auditor and then a report out, then, as Ashley is doing this evening, the presentation of those financials are provided to the board. We did try to get them as quickly to you as possible after the fiscal committee looked at them. This evening, the action of the board would be to accept the audit report, and absolutely, if there are any particular things that you'd like to have more in-depth questions answered, or go over any things that are in there with the fiscal committee, I think that's definitely a welcome opportunity to take.
The reason I'm asking, so I have no problem receiving the audit report, but my understanding, at least from past responsibilities, is that it is the board that must authorize the signing of the letter. And prior to that, I would appreciate an opportunity to have a conversation with, and maybe I do it privately. And I don't. When does the board approve the signing of the letter?
That would be this evening.
Tonight.
Basically, you accept it.
So in retrospect,
You accept it today. You
Yeah.
accept it
Yeah.
and you pass. That the financial statements are done. I would think that's the normal process. In typical companies, that's how it is. I'm assuming that's what you would have here as well.
The fiscal committee is utilized as the body of the organization that reviews, considers, makes adjustments to, and makes a recommendation. So the fiscal committee did accept the financials, the audit report on Monday evening.
I didn't know whether it meant receiving it, accepting it from our auditors, external auditors, or the actual authorization of the signing of the, where we own it. So.
If I can maybe provide some clarification comments away from RA. Typically, you would get the audit committee in a company, the board's audit committee would do the detailed review. And then depending upon the company's, the board's requirement, you can ask for a full 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour session if you want as a board, right? And I'm not sure that's happened here in the past, but is that what you're asking for?
Well,
but that will be done by the management typically, which is the staff in this case.
No, I understand. And I was not asking for a briefing by the auditor, the external auditors. I was wondering whether it is the practice of the board to actually go through the audited statements with the fiscal committee. And that was my question.
Typically
And
not.
apparently that has not been the custom.
But we can think about if that's something we would want to do.
I would like to do that. I don't know. I don't want to throw sand into the gears unnecessarily, but I do want to exercise due diligence. I've skimmed through the financial reports. I've read the auditor's letter and so forth. But
The only comment I would add to that is we have the board members sitting on the fiscal committee and the treasurer to come back to us with their recommendations because they have done the deep dive in that as a committee function. So I guess in the future, if we would just make it more known, I guess, that the auditors were coming in to do that the last fiscal committee meeting, any other board member could join that meeting would probably be the better play, in my opinion, because she could talk to me all day long and I wouldn't understand mostly what she has to say. So it doesn't do really me any good to sit through that briefing. That's why we have people that are smart in those areas to do that. So that's just my sense is I rely on the people on the fiscal committee and the treasurer to bring back their expertise and tell us whether it's a go or we got more work to do or whatever the other side of it's a go would be. That's just my thought.
Okay.
Julie?
I would only add that I think to somewhat answer John's thoughts would be that if the fiscal committee and the treasurer would prepare a statement or report based on what they have been, you've sat through, you have some knowledge to present something back to us, even if it's in the form of a memorandum from the committee, that they had taken that review and these were their additional comments. That might have been.
But for the sake of this review,
fine.
do we have to make a, looking at my motion?
Make a motion.
Well, I would, to answer John, as opposed to having the fiscal committee do a memorandum, I think what he is asking for going forward is to kind of know when fiscal committee is going to be meeting with the auditors, so he or any other board member who wants to take a deep dive can become involved at that point. And I think that that would be good going forward. To do that now, I think would certainly slow up the process, and I'm not sure what the timeline is and what the critical points are. But I suspect that it would be well for us to go forward tonight.
So is there a motion needed? Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we accept the audit.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Great.
I hate to do this to you, Patty. Can you step up to the microphone for us? Thank you.
I'm Patty Lentz, and I'm just curious, coming from the corporate world in relation to timekeeping, whether you're salaried or hourly employees, do you record your time on a daily basis or a weekly basis? What is your ruling for recording time?
Robert?
Hi, I'm Robert. CFO. I can answer that question. ADP, if we've got seasonal or hourly employees, there's a clock in, clock out process. So they log on to ADP, which is our timekeeping mechanism. They clock in and then they clock out, and that's how the time's captured. For salaried employees, it gets automatically populated 8 hours a day. Well, that's salaried, so Kate and I definitely work more than 8 hours a day, but it automatically populates, and then my time gets approved by Kate, and certain people have the other time approved. Where the issue was happening in the audit is on the seasonal side, and that's where we need to correct a few errors. So.
Okay, thank you. I was curious. I mean, I've always been a salaried employee, and I had to record hours worked, whether they were under 8 or over 8. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ready to move on to item F, the process to fill the open at-large seat. What I would like to do is have each director kind of talk a little bit about, very little bit about kind of their thoughts around this, how the process of how we might do this. I know we've talked about it amongst each other across the course of the last week or so, but just to do a very brief description of what process you would like to see us follow. If somebody has already said the process that you would like, if you could just say, I agree with so-and-so, and then we can just continue on. But I'd like every director to have an opportunity just to say kind of where they are, and then we'll take a motion after everyone has had a chance to speak on what the motion might be.
Would you like us to briefly state our reasons why we support one over the other or not?
Briefly.
Okay.
Before you go any further, at the BOC committee meeting, we clearly, as the other BOC committee members know, had a fourth option on the table. I've written a very detailed paper to save everybody time and to not be misquoted, and everybody on the board has it. I hope you've all read it. So there is a fourth option. While we're discussing all of these things here, it might be beneficial for the people to read what that fourth option is so they can understand exactly what it is we're talking about. So without objection, I'd like to provide them access to that.
Sure.
Thank you. Anybody here need it?
Nope.
No,
It's in our packet.
So So just as background, at our back committee meeting, we were discussing three options. One option is we don't fill the seat. The second option, and Ray, I don't remember how it went. Julie, you might remember. The second option was we do a call for. The second option was we directly appoint someone. The third option was to do we would call for candidates, and then the board would select based on interviews from the call from anyone who applied. And then Ray introduced a fourth option that we talked about, and that's what he's just passed out. Ray, do you want to give a very quick what that fourth option, Reader's Digest version, because everybody's reading it, but.
Do you want me to just go first?
You can?
However you want to do it.
No, that's fine. You can just go first, and then we'll work our way around.
I don't want to take up more time than is necessary, but it obviously needs to be discussed. There are three options stated here. The first one, do nothing, obviously, it's not going to happen. This idea of sending out a call for candidates. What we have here is a very short-term selection. It's basically a caretaker position. We're not having an election. We're making a selection with just us. And we recently had a very competitive election, very recently. The people have already spoken. We had record turnout. Eric is a slight winner over Van, and candidates 3, 4, 5, and 6. I don't even know if their combined total matched either Eric's or Ven's total of votes. So it's clear that Ven was neck and neck with Eric, next guy in line. And he's already made his presentation on this. And, I would think that on that basis, he needs to be one of the people we consider. On the other hand, this is a short-term caretaker position. We do need to fill it quickly. We have a very highly respected and knowledgeable person as treasurer, and Sridhar. He's already here. He's already up and running. The budget's coming up. He's good at that. I clearly would like to see the board consider these two people. As far as anybody else, the people who came in 3, 4, 5, 6, they've already run. We've already heard them. The people have already made the decision that they would rather have Ven. To reopen this a couple of months later, especially since Ven has continued to come to more meetings than any of us, when we count committee meetings, board meetings, everything else, he's everywhere, he's in touch, he can step in, he knows what we're doing. The people who came in 3, 4, 5, 6, I haven't seen them since they lost. So he's clearly better able to just step right in, which is really, really important here, the ability to step right in, get our 9th member up, and let's keep the momentum going. And the idea that we have some great candidate out there and there's an open competition, and then we should be open, it's not. It's a way to bring somebody who could be a good resume writer, a good interviewer, who knows somebody else on the board, to slip in without running for the office, without going through all the slugging it out that everybody did, and just hand them the job. This is totally wrong. This isn't open competition. This isn't opening it up to the community. This is potentially opening it up to some charges of cronyism and everything else. We don't need that. We don't have to have it. And so I think it's just to say that we're going to bring people up here to interview for a couple of minutes who write a great resume, and the 9 of us are going to make a better selection than the how many thousands voted? 7,000, 8,000, that we're going to know more than them. That's the height of arrogance. And it would be a cruel joke, and I'm just not in favor of cruel jokes. We need somebody who can put on board right now, who can run right now, who can lead us as Reston right now. And on the other hand, somebody who the people understand is a viable candidate that they would be happy with. Sridhar's president of RCA, he's been treasurer here, he's well known in the community. There's no doubt that he can do this and do it well, no doubt. And he's already here. There is no doubt that people held Van and what he was standing for in high regard. And that needs to be considered. I, for one, could go either way on this. I like both people as candidates. I think they're both deserving. I think they need to be considered. I can't even imagine anybody else that can even be thrown up, and by the time we could find that person, bring them in, interview them, we lose a few months, so the caretaker position gets cut even shorter, which doesn't make any sense. This position we're selecting now is going to be up for election again early next year. So for now, let's pick the best person that we can to fill the position in right now and move forward and get this board number 53 to continue to move in the right direction, which I think we are, by the way, early on. And that's why I put out this longer paper. And I'm sorry if there's people in here that means for them it's an elephant in the room, but if we try to bypass that and try to bring in somebody else and delay that, we're not only going to have an elephant in the room, we're going to have a pregnant elephant in the room. And there's going to be a lot of problems going forward on this. We don't need them. Let's just do the right thing. Just do the right thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. John?
Yes, I support a call for candidates, and I do it for the following reasons. The first is precedent, that in the, my understanding after talking with Kate is that in the last time we had vacancies, uncompleted terms, so the ones that ended up with the appointment in from most recent to most past, Daniela Rosa, John Higgins, and Ellen Graves, there was a call for candidates. So consistency with recent past practice, I think, is a strong consideration for me. Secondly, I do appreciate Ray's point that it's unlikely that people will come forward who would be a surprise, but it is possible. And I don't believe, as we strive for openness and asking the community to participate, that we should foreclose that possibility, though it may not be a probability. And finally, I understand the argument from efficiency that we could have a candidate very quickly. We could do it tonight if we wanted to. But I don't think democracy is efficient. I think there's an inefficiency to democracy which forces us to listen to people, to pause and reflect. We're a deliberative assembly that is charged with pausing and reflecting. So for those reasons, I favor an open call for candidates.
Yeah, I found this to be a really challenging decision because I do think transparency is important, but I also think it's important that we continue with the work that we need to continue with. You know, we've got a lot on our plate. We need to make decisions decisively. So at this point, I can be persuaded either way.
Okay. Eric?
So I think it's important for everybody here and for us to, this person will be selected by the board. Now how we get to that point, is what we're talking about here. But it will end up with a vote of 8 of us, and we'll decide who sits here. I guess I'm with Victoria, right? So past ones we have filled with a call, but it's June and we're in a budget cycle, and I want to hear the opinions of the rest of the committee.
Sure. Julie? Anything to add?
Yes. I agree with John. I absolutely think that the right thing for us to do is a call for candidates. We do have precedents, and as democratic as we can be and open in our community, I think that's important. We can make the call for candidates tomorrow. We can vote, we can receive those nominations and select somebody by the next board meeting. I don't think that puts us any farther behind with any other cycle. I think that there may be those in our community who have background, have experience in our community, our association, have knowledge of our budgeting process and the challenges of that, that would be willing to step up to a short-term commitment, but would not be willing to step up to a 3-year commitment, and thus perhaps might not have chosen to run in an election. We have, with no offense to my fellow board members, we basically have 5 board members who've not gone through the biannual budgeting cycle. And I think that that knowledge is important, having been through one myself. And I also, I guess, reflect on the this is huge in my mind, what we as a board have to face before us in terms of a consideration of the assessment of our own skills and the filling of our gaps within our collective unit, because we vote as one. And when we vote, it's a decision, and we move forward as one. And with the biannual budget, I think it's critically important. There's long-term impact on what that is, and so I really do think that it's important that we continue with the precedent of an open call, and I think it can be a very quick process. In 30 days, we can have a new member. That's it.
David?
This is a tough one. And I think I side with Ray on this. I think it's important that we go forward tonight. We have a lot of stuff on our plate, a lot of critical things. The budget, and part of the criticality comes from the fact that it's summertime, and we have to get moving. And I think that Ray's solution, when you think about Eric's statement that yes, democracies are wonderful, we want to be as democratic as possible, but we have to, the board's going to make a decision. This is not going to be another election. And I think that kind of cuts to the chase, where you have 2 people that have been put forward, at least in Ray's proposal, that are both worthy, can both be very helpful. I don't think it's next man up, because what would happen if the number 2 person was clearly someone that the people in Reston didn't want? And the fact that then is someone that they do want, that's great. But I do think that it would be a bad precedent to do next man or woman up and to decide that way. Similarly, I think that Ray is right when he talks about good resume writers, people that interview well. And not that it would necessarily happen. I would think that we would have enough wherewithal to smoke that out. But you could get someone who would not be representative. So it's a very tough one, but I agree with Ray that we should go forward with consideration of Van Ayer and Schridhart Gunnison tonight.
So one of the things Julie mentioned is a quick call, and that makes me nervous. We gave our community 2 months when we went to fill the treasurer spot, and even when we did that, we were accused that this was somehow this was a pretend process, that we had an outcome in mind. I've heard a number of you talk about, we're in this budget cycle, we need to move very quickly. I'm concerned that giving people 3 weeks to apply, school ends tomorrow, and if somebody's gone for, a week and comes back and digs out of their email and it's the 4th of July and they miss that call, we look like we have created fake transparency because we have gamed this system to where, we're going to do this for 3 weeks and we're going to make it open and we're going to say, you, and you please make sure you apply. And so I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that, we're going to lose in the eyes of somebody no matter what we do. Someone's going to say you did not give a voice to somebody. I'm persuaded with the idea of filling this now.
Okay, so everybody has had kind of a bite at the apple. I too, in this situation, and some people had a bigger bite, 2 bites. This is a tough one because, you know, we hear the words, and I struggle with this, is this idea of open and transparent, and I don't believe by taking Ray's option that we're not being open and transparent. I think we're telling you what we want to do and why we want to do it, and that's about as open and transparent. Whether people in the community agree or disagree, that's always going to be. And so I don't see those as mutually exclusive, that by doing a call for candidates means we're being more open and transparent. And to Eric's point, are we just, in some people's eyes, we're gaming the system because it's 4th of July and it's all these other things. And, you know, I think there's always going to be people that are going to look for fault in what we do. And hopefully people will also look and say they had a tough decision ahead of them and what they made was the best decision that the group of them together could make. I personally, going into a budget cycle, as simple it is for me, is I would like to see our treasurer have a vote. As we go to voting on things and we're in a budget cycle, I think it's important that our treasurer has a vote. I came onto the board and our treasurer was a full board member, and that made a lot of sense to me. So this is just weird for me to have a member of kind of the board, but not on the board. They're an officer of the board, but not a voting member of the board is just odd. I also agree that the community has kind of spoken. And so I think Ray's idea of the two candidates is a good one. And I know expediency isn't important to some as it is to others. It's very important to me because I get to see all the things on our plate, and it's a lot. And I'd be quite honest with you, to do a call, whether it's 2 or 3 weeks or what have you, when we have 2 individuals that have shown their ability to step up, whether they're coming to all the meetings and they're very engaged, or our sitting treasurer, I too agree that maybe we should just move forward. So that's kind of where I am. So that's where we are.
Can I make a motion?
Absolutely.
I make a motion that we adopt the principle that you just alluded to. We put Sridhar and Ben up as the 2 candidates, and we vote on it tonight.
Second.
All those in favor?
I would like to discuss.
Okay.
Kate, do we have any sessions scheduled between now and our July meeting, specifically on the budget?
No.
I see. So bringing someone on tonight would make basically no difference in our ability to move forward on the budget in our discussions. I think that the community has known before tonight that a vacancy has been made. I believe that was 2 weeks ago or so. And I think it's pretty well known in the community that there is a vacancy and that there are those who have expressed an interest in bringing forth their skills. My feeling is you don't know. You just don't know who might be interested and have the background. I understand what you're saying about having your treasurer have a vote, but I also think sometimes it's useful if you also have your treasurer to be slightly independent in their role as being an advisor to the board, and that we might not be hurt by having yet another vote, another thought process from the community. Thank you for allowing me to present that.
I would just say, because I get to see some of this happening, just because the board isn't having an official meeting about the budget, there's a lot of budget stuff still going on behind the scenes, which several board members are involved in, working with Robert on those things. So I do think there could be a gap if we were a month or 2 later. So anyway, there's a motion on the table. Any other discussion?
I just want to point out that these same people knew that there was an open board seat just a few months ago, so if they really were that anxious to serve, they could have done so then. And if they missed out on that opportunity, there were going to be 4 board seats available in about half a year. They're more than welcome to apply, go through the same process that Eric and Ben went through and others. So it's not like we are limiting the competition or keeping somebody from competing in this. That's just not the case. Thank you.
Call for the vote.
All those in favor of the motion? Did you write it down? No.
I made the motion, David seconded the motion.
Yeah. All those in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion failed.
No.
No, it's 4.
4 to 3.
But you,
Oh.
yeah, but you take it, you've gotten 4 and aye, now you need to
Okay.
see who's
You
opposed and
need
who
to-
Who's
right.
abstains.
opposed to that motion? 3. So we're 4 to 3. So the motion carries?
Yep.
So at this point, we would ask, well, one, Ben and Sridhar, do you accept the nominations? Are you, are you even interested? I'm assuming the answer is.
I'll accept. Yes.
And like we did with the treasurer, would you like to make a statement, or do you think you've made enough of your point of view known in your opening remarks?
I do have a couple of things.
Okay.
Jerry, do we need to make was the nomination sufficiently included in the motion?
Plus, I want to make sure everybody realizes this is not a secret ballot vote. This is an open vote. The only time that secret ballot is used is for officer elections.
Okay.
So in addition to the comments that I made earlier, I do want to mention, based on your comments on this discussion, you talk about it being, wanting to keep it democratic, okay? But also you pointed out that you are picking the person. So you're appointing a person, which totally eliminates any democracy from this process.
Sounds good.
So since the call for candidates, that option is out now, and you are going to nominate between 2 candidates, again, you're going to appoint a candidate, which you have to consider that it's still appointing a candidate versus truly if you wanted a democratic process, you would respect what the people have spoke. But this is the option you decided to pursue, so that is fine. I do want to mention about your comment about that the treasurer having a voting seat making sense. Well, I do remember being part of a meeting where, in fact, it was decided to put a call out for candidates after the election because it was okay as per RA rules to have a treasurer who's not a board member. So how are you going to address that issue come the next election? When this position, so in the next election, you're going to have a treasurer, be it a board member or not, who's going to, unless that person runs again and wins the seat, you're still going to have that issue. Well, I just wanted to point out a couple of, from me observing the conversation, I just wanted to point out a couple of my points. But I do appreciate what you chose to do tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Do you want to say anything?
So can we get the
Ken, what do we have-
ruling of council whether we have to do a separate nomination?
There has to be a separate, I mean, there has to be a nomination. You could do both, but.
That's what we did for treasurer.
Yeah, but I think here you've got a situation where
Nominate one or the
you
other.
nominate one or the other, if that's the case, or you can do both, but it's up to the board to make that decision.
Point of order, I think they just voted to nominate both for
Right.
consideration. That's what
Was it included in the
I see,
motion?
I didn't.
that's what I heard
That
was
was your
said.
motion.
That was the motion.
That was my
It
understanding.
was
Yeah.
including, it wasn't just to hear them speak.
No, it was
not- it
to
was not.
nominate both for consideration
Yeah.
by the board.
We're good there, Ken? Okay.
Yeah.
Quickly, please. We're behind schedule.
And so the motion will state that that
Well,
that
good
it
evening,
included.
thank you for the nomination. I'm here, happy to serve if this board elects me. I'll help as much as you want me to help. Thank you.
That was short.
That was good.
Thank you for that.
I like it.
So now we call for a vote? Is that what we do, Dave?
That we do?
I
All
think you
right.
need to probably make a,
One at a time. They've nominated both,
I agree.
so there needs to be a vote for Sridhar
And the
and a
others.
vote for
The name and then we'll vote.
We're all in favor
Right.
of voting for X,
Okay.
please raise your hand.
All in favor of voting for Sridhar, raise your hand. Okay. All in favor of voting for Ven, raise your hand. Okay,
Congratulations.
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 Seems like every time you come to a meeting, it just gets more and more.
Yeah, wait till you see what happens next.
Ben, thank you for
Thank you, Ben.
being open and available.
Okay.
Hearing on the pipeline. This is, my name's on this?
What do you, yeah.
My name's on this? Tell me again.
I can help.
Okay, please do.
So last month, the board heard information about the Williams Transco pipeline easement request and right-of-way request
The written statement.
in open session and in closed session. At this point in time, there's a public hearing to open up to the floor for anybody who may have any questions about that. There have been several changes that have been made to the easement and settlement agreement, which have been flowing into your inboxes throughout the course of the day. And I haven't had a chance to look this direction, so forgive me, but I believe that John McBride was going, there he is, good, I can see him, available to answer any questions that the board or community might have on those before you take action.
So appropriate to ask for any public comment at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
Any public comment on the Williams Transco pipeline easement? Erwin? Please make it short. 3 minutes.
I have far less than 3 minutes. My name is Erwin Flashman. I live at 1327 Buttermilk Lane. Kate just mentioned that there have been a number of changes come in to the proposed agreement, which we have not seen, and so we're not prepared to make a comment on it. And it would be helpful, at least, to have a briefing on what those changes are and what the entire agreement represents and the highlights of that before we make comments. Thank you.
John, do you want to address some of the changes that have been made? They're fairly minor.
Certainly. Be happy to. Board members, President. Basically, the changes arose from Director Mooney's concerns, legitimate concerns with the last draft. The changes that are before you in a document that we recommend and has been agreed to with Transco basically requires that if at any time in the future this pipeline gets abandoned and disused, and there's a federal process to do that, but if that's the case, then the pipeline company would not just have the right to remove their facilities, they would have the obligation to do that. So that is the only change that is in this document. And in fact, that would probably be done through the FERC regulation of that process, but I think it's a very good idea to add it to this document. Williams and their counsel have agreed to that, so it's before you.
John, one further point.
Yes, sir.
The language of the draft and an intermediate draft, thank you for making that correction as to not just the right but the obligation, because that basically gives the land back to us in usable form rather than with encumbered by appurtenances that the company might build. But what concerns me is that it says upon removal of, well, it says grantee shall restore the surface area of the property as closely as practicable to the condition it was immediately prior to the removal of any such improvement. And I think that should be prior to the installation of any such improvement. Because if I say that John has a responsibility to remove the table to the condition it was prior to the removal of the glass, I'm saying it stays the same, because prior to the removal of the glass, that's what this is. This is the state of the table prior to the removal of the glass. So I think it should be prior to the installation of the pertinences. Does that make sense?
With all due respect, I think on this point I disagree with you, sir. I thought your concern was more about the surface contours also, which is the last sentence. But the surface is even more so. The problem is, in this situation, that is a legitimate concern theoretically that we should analyze in different cases. But in this one, remember, this particular property, the improvements they're doing are totally within the pipeline easement anyway. So we're not dealing with natural contoured area before this removal and installation. They are really not altering the contours or the surface much at all anyway. So when you talk about restore it to approximate, we're really not accomplishing anything. But quite frankly, the biggest reason is in this situation with the limited improvements and size of this, 40 years from now, we're not going to know what that original surface and contours are. The only thing you're going to know is what was it like before you ripped it out and restore it back to that. So I think in different situations and different facts, different location, I would agree with you, but on this one, I don't think it's significant or material, and I think your RA staff that's been out there would agree that it really doesn't make any difference in this particular situation.
Let me try. I was never concerned about the contours.
Okay.
What I was concerned about was not just the removal of any apparatuses which might be installed in the ground.
Yes.
But the restoration of the ground, if there's gravel there and so forth, that it be restored not to what it was prior. I find the word prior to the removal to be very, very confusing. Because as I said, if I say I want to restore this to the condition prior to the removal of the glass, that means this condition. There's no restoration. So I'm not concerned about messing around with contours, but the removal of gravel, planting of grass, and so forth.
I think I understand you better now, but again, in this particular situation, the gravel would be removed. If you look at the last sentence, it does talk about either restoring, mulching the disturbed area, or seeding with the seed mix, which is probably what RA staff would require. So I think we're covered there. You have to read this paragraph together.
No,
So I honestly think we're covered in that situation.
Does anyone else have my concern?
There are currently trees there that are being removed, correct? For the easement?
There's 2 trees that got
Two trees.
removed, if
So I think
remember
what you're getting
correctly.
at is, it's not just about the removal of gravel and reseeding and mulching, whatever, but there's screening, there's trees. We'd like to see it return to the state that it's in today, generally. And that general state is grass and trees to shield the area.
Thank you. That is one concern. The other concern is pure syntax. It's pure syntax to say, I'm going to restore this table to the condition it was prior to the removal of the glass. This is the condition prior to the removal of the glass. The glass is not being removed. So syntactically, it doesn't work for me either.
Well, again, they're removing the improvements that they made to it, which would include any surfaces and gravel, so. Again, I just don't think in this particular situation, and given our time frame, I really don't think it makes a difference in that situation. Especially given the fact that it's within the pipeline corridor anyway. I mean, if it were to occur, which is doubtful 40 years from now, 50 years from now, Reston would then decide what to do with it, whether to restore it in trees, whether to have more garden plots or something like that. So it wouldn't necessarily be left to grow up in trees, but it could. We could speculate all day. If this were a bigger project, a different project on natural surfaces with big mature trees, I would say differently and recommend differently, and I think your staff would also.
Yeah, I'm just, when we're all dead, because perpetuity is a long time. When we're all dead, some attorney can get a hold of this and say, yeah, I'm going to return it to the condition it was immediately prior to the removal of the improvement, which means I don't have to do a thing.
I wouldn't say not do a thing. You're going to be restoring it, you're going to be seed mixture, mulching, whatever it is. The contours are going to be approximately the same. The only thing is, in your hypothetical, how are you going to know that 50 years from now what was there? You're going to remember there were two trees. Again,
I see both points of view, but in this particular debate, I think I want to defer to council.
Well, he's the landlord.
The one who has a law license?
Yeah, meaning John.
Well, John is our land use counsel.
John is our land use attorney.
land use, again, and it relates to this specific instance and project.
So that was really the fundamental changes we were making, which Erwin is saying, you know, that was pretty much the fundamental change from the original document that was in the packet.
The only change was obligating them to remove the fixtures instead of giving them the right to do it and rely upon the federal regulation. Now you have the federal regulation and you've got this document to guarantee it. That's the only difference.
So given that change,
That includes the valves that they're going to put in now and the pipeline which is already there? Question mark.
No, this deals with, because they already have rights under the pre-existing easements for the pipelines throughout. And that'll be dealt with again by FERC. This deals with anything that is added now under the new easement, which would be the valves and the connections to the pipeline. Yeah.
So the pipeline's removal would be dependent then on FERC?
Yes. Just like it is now.
As it is now.
Okay.
But the return of the land would occur under this agreement? But the return of what is granted by this easement?
Yes.
This exclusive easement?
Yes.
Would be returned, but the other easement would persist until such time as FERC held that it should be returned?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
thanks, John. Any other public comment on this easement, Tammy?
Tammy, between 2503 Foxcroft Way, we have a property in the cluster adjoining this to the west. I'm confused by the diagram that shows the fenced-in area with a gate on the east and an uphill and a gate on the west downhill. And we were told at a previous meeting those two gates were for trucks to pull through the entire little yard and go out. Well, I don't see that they have any truck that's going in there. That's not, that they said they were too big of a trucks. It wasn't a pickup that they're talking about. That they would have to turn and come back to the driveway cut that we're giving, that VDOT is making for them. I don't think there's enough room there, but that's just another, problem. It doesn't look to me like there's a turning radius for any bigger truck that cannot back up to go and make that turn.
John's coming back.
And by the way, I completely understand what John Mooney is saying. That's his language.
Yeah, the Williams representative is here. That's really more his question, but he told me that basically they're required to have access at 2 points in a gated area for emergency access.
And there's ample space for the trucks, obviously.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
to turn around and do whatever.
But it's primarily a safety issue, not a truck through issue.
Okay. Any other comments? No? So, this is a motion to,
Close the public hearing. Where's the motion?
it's on page.
Oh, it's on, okay.
41. So, ready for the motion then? So the proposed motion, move to grant Williams Transco Pipeline exclusive easement and right-of-way request over Reston Association common area located off North Shore Drive adjacent to the association's golf course island garden plot under the conditions including compensation approved by the RA board during the meeting of May 25, 2017 and negotiated by legal counsel as enumerated in the attached documents.
So moved.
Everybody,
Is there a second?
yeah, we have a second.
Okay.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Passed. Okay. Item H, public hearing on the hunting request. Larry, your name's on this one. Thank the Lord it's not my name again.
Happy to come up. You have in your packet a lot of information regarding the application of 3 property owners on Sourwood Lane. It's actually a renewal application to conduct bow hunting. The specifics of the recommendations, they're in the motion. I'm not going to read your motion. You have that in front of you. We have 2 of the owners are here tonight. One is on vacation. We also have a representative from Suburban Whitetail Management, the organization that conducts the actual hunting. And they're here if you want to hear from either the owners or Suburban Whitetail. And I'm happy to answer any questions before you open up the hearing.
So, any comments from the public on this request? John?
John Bowman, 12229 Corn, that's spelled Q-U-O-R-N, Lane with the fat cats, P-H-A-T. You know how that drill goes, you've heard it.
You need to come up with new stuff, John. New stuff.
Huh?
Any new stuff.
New stuff, okay. All right. Your time is important. You spent way too much time talking about how you're going to fill your board position. You got stuff to do. This request comes up every year. You spend lots of time hashing it. It's legal. They have the right to do it. They do the administrative stuff. Quit screwing around. Approve it and move on to something important. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay. Any other public comment? Tammy?
100% approve of this. I have 14 deer at a crack in my backyard eating everything in sight. There are way too many of them all over the place. Please reduce the population. Even though this location won't reduce my problem, it'll reduce other people's problems. My property looks terrible. They're eating the understory of everything. It's not ecologically a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy.
Terrorists of the environment.
Any other comment? Any comments from the board?
Madam President, I move that we approve the hunting permits.
Second.
All those in favor?
In accordance with.
In accordance with this long motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
And all the,
as in our packets.
all in favor? Any objections? So moved. Now we're getting back on time. Land use update.
Comments
members of that band be proud of.
Larry, you're up again.
Thank you, Ray.
And I just want you to know that we're behind schedule.
Well, all I know is that I talk faster than John. So I'm going to talk fast.
We have Johns everywhere.
Everybody's named John. I'm going to go start going by E. John Carr just to make it.
All righty, well, we have 3 items for you to hear about tonight. The first is the Fairfax County easement request, Snake Den Branch at Lake Audubon. That is the stream restoration project over by South Lakes High School. We're just going to give a really quick update on that. Then I want to talk to you about ball fields and recreational amenities at the Reston TSAs. And then John's going to talk to you about the PRC zoning ordinance amendment. So let's roll. You all have, I think, heard about this particular project. This is a stream restoration project on about 800 linear feet of stream. South Lakes Drive on the top of the image, Lake Audubon at the bottom. And the county has jumped in part to protect their infrastructure and because the community has rallied around this cause. For those of you who were on the board earlier, I know Julie's been very involved. It's in her district. A lot of community engagement, a lot of one-on-one engagement with the residents, many residents, both for Cedar Cove Cluster and individual homeowners on Wake Robin Lane. That slide didn't pop up, did it? There we go. It's kind of weird. What is proposed is very similar to the stream restoration that is taking place under the Northern Virginia Stream Restoration Bank, where about 8 miles of stream have been restored in Reston by Wetland Studies and its contractors. This is just kind of a future condition of this. Just give you a little quick idea of that. This is an overview of the concept. It's a little tough to read. The blue are the proposed access points that have been worked out with the neighbors. And the neighbors, as well as Reston Association, should be receiving their official request for easements in early to mid-July. And what we anticipate is at the July board meeting, the board will have the opportunity for this as an action item. Specifically on the association's property, this is South Lakes Drive is to the left of this image, so this is not oriented north-south. There are 2 parcels of Reston Association common area, one much larger than the other. The county has requested an easement from Reston Association for this work to take place. I think you have a letter from James Pattison in your packet that indicates that once this easement is in place, the county will be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance in perpetuity of the improvements there and to make sure that the objectives of the restoration continue to work for years and years and years. And so, again, just a quick update that hopefully the anticipated schedule is that in July you'll be reviewing the actual easement request package. Any questions about that particular one?
Again, is an action required of the board on this, and if so, when? Tonight?
July.
In July.
So when we anticipate
July.
that.
Okay.
Yes. Anderson? Okay, I'm trying to.
No, and I did notice that the DRB looked at it this week and gave approval.
Yes.
Concept.
The DRB approved the concept, and so it's on track right now. And so again, we hope to bring you the official easement and request package to you in July. Next item is talk about ball fields and recreational amenities in the transit station areas. Some people in the audience have raised this, and if you've heard it at the various and sundry meetings, many meetings. So real quick, the comprehensive plan guidance has a goal of adding the capacity equivalent to 12 full-service athletic fields because of the assumed growth in the transit station areas and in the corridor in Reston. And at a minimum, 3 of those full-service athletic fields are to be located actually in the corridor area. The remaining capacity of 9 fields can be achieved by development of new fields, whether in the corridor or elsewhere nearby, or adding capacity to existing fields, whether they're Fairfax counties or Reston's. So this is guidance straight from the comprehensive plan. So these are goals set out there. It's interesting, the Park Authority has a standard that they apply. So the Park Authority gets to the table as part of the Reston core team. A zoning application goes in, Park Authority's there, urban forestry, transportation, etc. And they have a metric that if there's 2.2 million gross floor area of square feet, there's an expectation that that amount of development will drive the need for one full-service athletic field, talk too fast, which is synthetic turf and lights, because you get the greatest amount of use out of that type of field. Developments less than 2.2 million gross floor area are contributing to a ball field fund. That's there, and that's already happening, although those funds don't get conveyed until there's the first residential occupancy permit or RUP issued for the project. And so a lot of these rezoning applications have come in. They have part of their development conditions and proffers are that they're contributing to the ball field fund. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide as well. But for the large developments, and I'm going to go into a little more detail about that, there's an expectation that those would be done on site. And I'll show you a couple of examples of that here in a minute. So the monetary contributions, it's $1.72 per square foot of new residential or commercial development. So when you think about a 4 million square feet development, that's a lot of money that applicant has to contribute into this fund to provide ball fields. But if it's 4 million square feet, there should be an expectation that it's on their property, which obviously then they wouldn't have to contribute that, presumably because they're providing it on their site. Per the comprehensive plan, and these are the really important points here, these funds may be used to provide new parks or school sites and so forth. That money can also come to Reston Association. We are, shall we say, eligible to receive those funds to improve our own fields. And you'll see some recommendations at the end of this. And then the funds committed thus far have all been directed to the Fairfax County Park Authority on the rezonings that have come through so far.
I think you said this on the previous slide. So is there a acreage or an amount of space that they have to do if they're on their own prem, if they're 2.2?
They have to commit the land to do that.
How much land?
It's roughly 3 acres.
Okay.
Roughly. So that'll make more sense when you see it a couple slides down. So again, just going back to this slide for a second, all of the funds committed thus far through the entitlement processes have been directed towards Fairfax County for that ball field fund, although we are certainly eligible to receive those funds. So this is...
Question. So how does that process work? Because FCPA is going to get the money first, right? But they don't necessarily have the land around here to set up new fields.
Right. So the comprehensive plan guidance is they can either build new fields or they can upgrade existing fields. The existing fields in or near Reston that are the most eligible to be upgraded are Baron Cameron Park, which has a recently adopted master plan from 2013 to turf and light. I think it's up to like 7 fields on that particular property. In addition, there's additional capacity at Lake Fairfax Park, which is, again, outside of Reston's master plan boundary. In addition, Nike Park, just to the north, it's actually in Great Falls, but just north of Route 7, has additional capacity as well. They're not in the TSAs at the moment, and that is not, the specific intent.
So
Victoria.
the county can take the money and send it anywhere in the county, and on the list, correct? And on the list of parks that you mentioned.
No, I'll let John answer that question.
Okay. Well, in addition, a park missing, a Fairfax County park within Reston that's missing from that is South Lakes Drive Park, which the soccer field is abysmal. Softball field's beautiful. So is that not on the possibilities?
Well, that park's master plan does not suggest a synthetic turf and lights. The county has different scaled parks. They have neighborhood, community, and then regional parks. And generally, it's their community and regional parks, as opposed to the neighborhood parks, that they apply the full-service athletic fields to.
Okay.
That's not to say that they couldn't remaster plan that.
Well, and I wasn't necessarily thinking that it needs lights or anything like that. I was just thinking that it's in terrible condition. And the idea that it's not on that list is a little odd. But I think you've explained that.
Okay. So this is I think this is an important slide. So right now, these are the 5 largest rezonings either contemplated or underway in Reston. And you saw this at the May presentation that I made, where I actually had some graphic representation of a couple of these, Association Drive, for instance. So these are the acreages, and for the top two, Reston Crescent, which is right across Sunrise Valley Drive from here, and then Reston Gateway, which was just unveiled at the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting this past Monday night. Those are monster projects. Neither of those show a ball field. And we've asked, what about ball field? Clearly the square footage that you have reflected on your, initial concept plans would suggest that a ball field should be located there. And in both those cases, the county staff have essentially made that ask. And there's no resolution to those yet. The top one there is in process, that's been accepted and is going through the process. Reston Gateway has been submitted, but I don't think it's been formally accepted. And then the others, you can see submitted or not submitted. But this just gives you an idea that these are large parcels, most of which are going to have way more than the threshold of 2.2 million square feet in aggregation, where these ball fields, to meet the comprehensive plan guidance of, hey, they should be on site, these are the, let's just call it the most eligible parcels, or the most eligible rezonings where that could and should occur, in our opinion. So
So that's part of really my question. So now we're not going to have enough capacity from a ball field's perspective within the TSA, especially with all these coming. So what is the plan in terms of how do we address this? Because there is going to be pressure on the RA fields, right?
Correct. So I'm going to get to the recommendations, and I think I'm going to let John chime in on this when he gets up to do his part as well. So this is just this is the 5 that I just listed. You see these here. You've got the very top one, Town Center North. In the middle, on the 3 on the left, is Reston Gateway Commons, the Boston property. Just below that, again, right across the street, is Reston Crescent. And then you go over to the Association Drive, and then the far right is Isaac Newton Square, just to give you a kind of relationship of where these large rezonings are taking place in Reston.
Quick question. So the Association Drive, does also takes into consideration our connector, our soapstone connector that was completed in 2014 for the county?
Yeah.
When the measure opened?
That-
That's still there, right? I mean, they're not
vision?
erasing that with this.
That is correct. Yeah, it is contemplated, and in fact, on the graphic that was shared with us by the county, it is actually shown on that southwest corner.
Good. I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
So again, that's kind of we'll show you where they are, and then so for recommendations, it's clear that the community as a whole, the Reston Association and the community as a whole, and I know Tammy has spoken to this a number of times at various and sundry meetings. We need to continue to advocate for the athletic fields in the TSAs, not outside, but at a minimum, get the 3 in the TSAs. And then we need to ensure that the additional athletic field capacity is planned and implemented to meet the future needs. Because one of the things that seems kind of apparent is that if they're putting money, the Park Authority is putting money towards, for instance, Lake Fairfax, right now, those needs were identified prior to the comprehensive plan even be adopted. Barron Cameron Park was right in the middle of that process with adoption in 2013, so it's unclear. We're trying to find out if they considered the growth speculation at the time the comprehensive plan was being, going through the special studies and so forth with those fields, as well as maybe perhaps even Nike Park. So we need to keep close tabs on that, because we want to make sure that they're addressing the future capacity, not the needs that are already been identified from people who are already living here. And then thirdly, I think we need to request funds that are generated by development and redevelopment of Reston are applied with priority given to locations within the master plan boundaries, first and foremost, and only secondarily to those proximate outside, like Lake Fairfax, which is just outside of Reston. And I think funds should also be applied to RA to improve our facilities where possible. That may not be the easiest task. We've heard some discussions about different things on fields here, say in the last 7 or 8 months, but I think it is important for us to consider that as the community grows.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So with these recommendations, I mean, they're recommendations that if you are in concurrence with them, that would enable Larry and I, your land use team, really to push with the county with your approval.
Yes.
I would say at a minimum.
Yes.
Yeah, at a minimum. What concerns me is we talk about improving RA facilities, but that assumes that we have enough land to have adequate facilities to accommodate all the development in the TSA areas, which is something I don't believe is true.
Yeah.
And that's my concern.
Yeah, we don't have land to create new fields without taking down trees, quite frankly.
Exactly. So we can improve the fields we have, but the influx of users with the development of the TSAs is going to overburden our existing fields. And you can improve all you want, but you can't create land.
Unless it is deeded to you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what we would like to see from the developers.
My concern is that it's not just athletic fields that are being used. We have our trails. What, we're going to put, RFID chips into every Restonian, and you can't, you get zapped if you don't have, on a trail. But, how do you keep people from using our facilities? And I think there needs to be recognition by the county that we are providing an infrastructure of, use of land and natural resources that we should be compensated for in some fashion.
Yeah, they're imposing a burden on us.
Yeah.
So is the ask from the board of whether we concur that this is the direction we should be going in?
Absolutely.
Without objection, we can concur to that, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Would you please repeat that, Sherry?
I don't know what I said.
So the recommendation in the motion would be that we accept these recommendations and authorize Kate and her staff to speak on our behalf.
Accept them at a minimum.
At a
minimum. At a minimum.
As a minimum requirement.
Can I steal some words from John? This is an absolute no-brainer. Why are we wasting any more time on this? Yes, at a minimum, let's go. Give him the approval.
Anybody else?
Strongly concur.
Everybody concur? Agree?
Yes.
Go forth, Larry, do good things.
Thank you, and I think John wanted to add just a couple.
Just a quick add-on at the sake of making the president irate at me for delaying, but really your staff and council working with county staff is very important to try to come up with a plan in advance of when these monies actually come of how to increase field capacity in terms of actually building new fields or upgrading fields, exactly the dialogue we had. And right now, the Park Authority doesn't have a plan, so we're trying to push for that plan, just to make that clear. And we would be coming back and reporting to you, and I think the Park Authority would. Those proffers, where the money is coming from developers, they are tagged to areas for recreation facilities that will serve that property. So it doesn't go to the Park Authority and go anywhere. There is that link, so that's a good thing. The question is, that's why we want to see this plan, so that we agree with what the Park Authority thinks is convenient for those new residents. Because the developers want it near there too, because they're paying for it. They want it to benefit their property, to increase its value. So in terms of Mr. Carr's comment, it all gets down to our One Reston initiative and Julie's. All of this is, we've got to figure out a way to get all of these projects into either RA or RTCA, depending upon where they fall, as members.
Yes.
Your committees and your staff is doing a RA amenity analysis, which we presented a while back, that looks to see if, depending upon what amenities are being presented in the application, is there a deficit, are they equal to, or should they pay or do something else in addition to membership? So we're trying to be fair, upfront, transparent, and address that concern, but I can tell you it's not easy. Which leads me to my last point, is it can't just be us. I think, and the president has been very good about it, with Kate, senior staff. It's got to be a direct line and a communication and an understanding with the Hunter Mill District Supervisor. The county controls, the county negotiates proffers on these. The county is the representative body for Reston in zoning. So we can't lose sight of that, and we've begun that, and hopefully we'll be making progress on it.
Excellent.
Madam President, I'd like to know exactly the shape of the recommendation we're doing. We said yes, but at a minimum. I'm afraid that's not strong enough, and let me explain my concerns. If we say that, I would rather say that we recommend that we negotiate hard, that for those developments either approved or submitted, there are two of them, over 2.2 million square feet GFA, that we advocate and indeed insist that they develop their ball fields per the county comprehensive plan.
Could that not be
Focusing on those two, obviously we should do. But I'm concerned that we don't know, we really don't know what the population will be in the TSAs. Terry Maynard's done a very interesting analysis of the effect, the multiplier effect of possible permissible population simply by choosing an average square foot per dwelling unit and an average square foot per office worker that is probably unrealistically large. And that will have a multiplier effect on the population that will occur in the TSA area. And that will exhaust the capacity of our fields, parks, paths, and so forth, not to mention our schools. Secondly, the proposed PRC ordinance change, which the board has already taken a position on last meeting, but we've heard no response, to my knowledge. That in itself could drive up enormously the population in the TSAs. So in the face of that, I don't want what we approve to give the appearance that we're willing to settle for something. I would rather say that you know the five developments that you put up there, Larry, and the first two especially, which were clearly well over 2.2 million square feet GFA, that we advocate is a weak word for what I want to do. For athletic fields in those areas. It seems to be the norm that the county has adopted. It should be enforced. So I don't want this to appear that the Reston Association Board, this is my view anyway, is settling for this as a, we'll settle for it. We'll settle for it.
I would just add that I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I would just add that we really need to have a seat at the table. And so from when you come back with a more detailed set of recommendations, I would at least like to see how you would like to be involved in the process. As how would you would involve Reston Association in the process, right?
Well,
like, when would you? Right now, I know that you're seeking information on the 2 or 3 proposals that have come in, as opposed to seeking the proposals, from the county. Should you be receiving a copy simultaneously? Should you be involved in the discussions with respect to these things, right from the beginning, right? So if we can come up with an engagement plan as well, and what it would, from a financial perspective, to the extent that you can, plan for the population based upon the development that we're going to see.
We have, we've worked over the last 3 years to get a seat at the table in a lot of those discussions. And I will tell you that the county, quite frankly, doesn't want us at the table in most of those, particularly the early discussions. And, I think we've made some real headway in our, we'll just call it relationships with, certainly county staff and actually the development community as well. And I think John would agree with that. It's a difficult thing to do, quite frankly. Because it's not our decision as to, is the rezoning going to go forward or not, ultimately. Our hope is that we can influence to the greatest extent possible and that we can get the community stirred up to be engaged, to influence to the greatest extent possible.
I think we can agree that this is a good starting place if we need stronger language or something down the road a little bit, but, advocates, I would just like us to move forward with this and you come back and tell us how it's going, and if we need to do something bigger, stronger, better, we can do that at a later point.
Yeah, I guess at this point, until we get additional information about the plan of implementation and things like that, I see this as really as the minimum.
Yes, right.
We've got to have a starting point.
Yeah. Kate?
Just to allay any concern, absolutely, we're going to continue to press for the ball fields that were named in the comp plan in the locations that they were named. We will not let that go, even if it means coming back and with a specific language or an encouragement. And with Sherry and David are doing a great job representing the Reston Association at the Hunter Mill District Office of encouraging and saying this is important. The community needed this. It's put in the comp plan. It needs to happen. If we need to advocate a little stronger, we will do that. I know that the process has begun, and we had the wherewithal to pause and make sure that you're okay with the direction that we're going. That's in essence, it's an overview. So there's definitely more to come on this, and we're working very hard at being present or calling to be present on that.
Just two more quick comments. The comprehensive plan, I failed to mention this when the little graph was up. The only location in the comp plan that identifies very specifically as a potential site for one of these full-service athletic fields is the Isaac Newton Square property or assemblage. Just clarify that. And then lastly, I want to thank Kelsey because she did a lot of putting the presentation together. So.
But the policy part of the plan requires
Yes.
Absolutely. More without a specific location.
Correct.
Next. Do you have three? Didn't you have?
Tom?
Okay. Let's keep it moving.
I don't know how to get it up there.
Break.
Oh. Actually, I think the comments are a good segue into what I'm presenting, which is an update and a further discussion of the two changes that county staff proposes to the PRC district regulations. If you recall, we first talked about this last month. Some of it may be repetitive, but I think it's important enough to be repetitive. There's some concepts here that are very important going forward. The green areas are the PRC areas. I think most of you that have been on the board are probably sick of the blue outline of Reston. You're going to see it in your sleep before we're done. That's our One Reston initiative. So to get oriented right through the middle in a dividing sort of way, which we're trying to overcome and undivide, is the Dulles Toll Road corridor area. That's the old RCIG area, which was not Reston Association covenanted land. It was not zoned PRC. It has your traditional county industrial and office zonings. That's where all the office parks were located in order to be a central commercial tax base for the county, which it did become. So the county is proposing changes to the PRC district that only affects a portion of Reston, which is in the green. They're doing two changes. We've talked about them. The first one is to increase the overall persons per acre limitation. They're looking to advertise to go from the existing 13 people per acre to 16 people per acre. And the question is, where in between should that ordinance be? And we'll talk about that. The second thing they're doing, second paragraph, is recommending that the board be able to approve an individual project in excess of 50 dwelling units per acre, but only in the TSAs and only in accordance with comp plan guidance, which again can be somewhat manipulative. Doesn't give us much certainty. The problem is unlimited density on a project-specific basis is available through this. If the board likes it, they can approve it if this ordinance change governs. Right now, it's limited to 50 dwelling units per acre. Not people, but dwelling units. So here we go, the 16 units. The real question is 16 justified, 16 people per acre? Is it needed to implement the changes made in 2014 and 2015 to the comp plan? That's the real question. County staff says it is. Again, even though we're talking about a change to a population metric per acre, what it really comes down to on an application by application basis is how many more multifamily residential units can you make an application in the PRC district and that the board can approve. So it really doesn't deal with population directly. That's a little bit of a side road. It deals with the important part is how many units are going to be approved on each project that goes through. That's the frustrating part. We've talked about making great strides, getting a place at the table. This board, the RCA, Terry and Tammy have always been engaged in this process for years, but more and more people are becoming engaged and knowledgeable, which is a great thing. The problem is their voice has been more directed towards these plan amendments, zoning amendments, and things that the county is doing as a whole, rather than each individual zoning application. That's where the battleground is. That's where you have the biggest say in what the future of your community is, because each of those applications will deal with number of units. They have to say the number of residential units in the PRC district. They can't just get approved a square footage of office and residential. They have to tell you how many units. That triggers our analysis through your staff and through your committees and through your ARB of commenting on these applications up through the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee. The frustrating part is the community that's becoming so engaged is not becoming engaged on each and every application. They need to. Applications anywhere in Reston affect the rest of Reston. So while this is very important, let's not lose sight of each individual application. So here we are. Currently, the ordinance says 13 people per acre. Again, what's important is how many units can you get out of that? What happened is there's 3,335 units available under that cap to be zoned, to be allocated in a zoning throughout Reston and the PRC district. County staff says that's not enough for the changes that were made to the comp plan in 2014 and 2015. So what does that mean? Well, the PRC district regulations and the Reston master plan have always worked together to regulate in a big picture context development within Reston. We're focusing on the high density areas, multifamily units. prior to 2015, you had a whole lot more multifamily unit areas, high-density areas, than in fact the new plan calls for, right? What happened is the new plan consolidated the areas where this was appropriate, and it intensified the amount within those areas. To a certain extent, near Metro and in Reston Town Center, that's smart growth, right? That's a good thing. The trouble is you got to be careful because too much smart growth is dumb. So again, you got to be careful. Too much of anything can have harmful impacts. So all of those areas before were limited. It looks like you could do a lot of development. You were limited by the 13 persons per acre cap. That's how the PRC zoning ordinance works in conjunction with the comprehensive plan. Nowhere else in the county does that happen. So the cap is very important and remains very important. So how it increases is an important thing. We shouldn't increase it with flexibility or uncertainty or just to do it so we don't have to do it again in the near future. Population and density caps are important because what they do is they keep the infrastructure that's been planned in balance with the development level. Plain and simple. That's the best tool to do that. And it's done that way in a planned community, unlike other areas of the county. Other areas of the county do it differently. This is how we do it in Reston. So we're at 11.9 people per acre now. That's not controversial. That's been proved. Each application that comes through in a PRC district tells you how that bucket is filling. It gives you all the entitlements. That's all the built environment, and the entitled or zoned but not yet built is included in that figure. So that's about right, because if you ignore the new plan amendments and you look at this plan, most of the areas in Reston have been built out. So it's not unusual for us to be approaching that cap of 13.
John, may I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Are affordable housing units, my understanding is they're not counted in the density. Now, is that only privately provided affordable housing units, or does that include also publicly provided affordable housing?
No, well, they're not counted in the affordable dwelling unit ordinance, which is a requirement in some zonings. In order to incentivize that and get cooperation in that program, they don't count towards your density.
But the densities that you've quoted,
like fellowship would count.
Would count, okay.
Unless it comes in under that ordinance, which I doubt.
Okay, thank you.
So the plan amendments did happen. There were changes. As I said before, it narrowed the areas of where these high densities would go. But they did increase. They increased in density. So an increase in the population per acre is needed. I think that's more factual than opinion. Some increase is needed due to the change in the Reston Master Plan. The question is, how much? That's a very important question. Now let me talk for a minute right here about a request that the Reclaim Reston, some RA individuals wrote a letter to you and sent it. I think this is a wonderful thing. It's evidence of engagement and analysis. But the problem is, I recommend, or I say that the county doesn't have the authority to implement what they are requesting. The reason I say that is they're requesting a moratorium on zonings and development activity and denial of applications or moratorium until adequate infrastructure is available. Now, the county tried to do just that years ago in the 70s and was struck down in the Virginia Supreme Court. There's no less than 5 Supreme Court cases over the interim. The law is very clear. That's why you don't see that happening anywhere in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I caution you, and this is a perfectly legitimate letter for these people to send to the Board of Supervisors, to the chairman. That's perfectly fine because you're trying to push the envelope and you're trying to show how concerned you are. For this body to make this request or as a demand, I would not recommend it. It's a little different. We're in a little different position. Because what happens when you ask the county board to do something that it can't do, doesn't have the authority to do, and is illegal? What happens is it's not going to do it. And it's not going to listen to you next time you ask for something. So we have to be careful. We got a seat at the table. We have to be careful of what we ask for and why. So that's my caution on that. So I think it's a great letter and engagement. I will say that this board is not the representative body of the entire Reston community in terms of zoning. It's the Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County. They control the rezoning. They're the representative board, the Hunter Mill District Supervisor, and the chairman. Those are the 2 key people that this letter and ones like it should go to. RA doesn't even represent the entire Reston community because this board doesn't represent people in Reston Town Center. So again, I think we all have a role to play in this, and we need to have a cooperative role. RCA is a great organization to bridge that gap because it's my understanding they represent people in our TCA area also. Is that true?
It's true.
So again, everybody's got a different role, and we need to work together to get things like this done. So let's get back to the PRC ordinance. How much more than 13 persons per acre is needed? More precisely, how many more multifamily dwellings were clearly added in the 2014 and 2015 plan amendments? That's the real question. That's the question we've been asking the county. That's the information we want, because maybe that equals 16 people per acre. Maybe it doesn't. We don't think it does at this point, but we don't have all the information. So
John,
that's
may
what
I
we're
ask?
continuing. Yes, sir.
So you've mentioned, and it's in the staff report, the county staff reports, that these zoning changes are necessary. They're needed in order to implement the comprehensive plan. This is at times from the same people who say the comprehensive plan is merely a guide that need not be followed. So,
well, I think you're taking them out of context a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, what is the necessity for what is the legal necessity that requires the zoning ordinance to accommodate the comprehensive plan limits?
They work together, especially in the planned community. Remember, the population cap implements the plan and is a restriction on that. When you have in a planned community, the comprehensive plan is a bit more than just a guide like it is in other jurisdictions and outside the planned community. In these PRC districts, you have requirements for certain zoning actions to be in conformance with the plan. So it's a little more than a guide. So I say it's taken a little bit out of context. There's some documents where the county says it's a guide only, and that's true countywide. But you have to put it in the context of the PRC district. So it is different. If I'm a developer and I come in and I've got a specific plan recommendation, and you'll see it in a little bit when we get to it, where this property is recommended and envisioned to have 2,000 units, and I can't get there under the PRC zoning district, then I'm going to rezone to a different district, which has adverse ramifications throughout how's the county going to deny that when the plan calls for it, and legally that's the only way I can get there? Okay.
So the answer is it's the special force given by the zoning ordinance to PRC.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
in the planned community.
In the planned.
In the planned community. So it is different. But that doesn't mean the PRC should have a cap that isn't
Unreasonable,
justified.
right.
Isn't justified to that plan. And that's what we're trying to find out. So the other question is how many more multifamily dwellings on the PRC land were assumed in the traffic operations analysis that were done in the plan amendment, but more importantly, were done in the recent RNAG study. Because again, we shouldn't be increasing the cap beyond the number of units that were assumed in that study, because then your transportation infrastructure is out of balance. So again, those are the two real questions we're trying to get the information back from. So we don't want to increase it too much. We don't want to invite development levels that are not in balance with the planned infrastructure. So it is very, very important. We haven't received full answers to these questions still. County staff has said that 12,257 multifamily units were clearly added by the comp plan. Their charts say that. They said that in their last meeting. They haven't told us how they arrive at this number. What are the building blocks? Right? That's what we need to look at. They have added some information on the website. And for anybody watching and board members, the county has a good website on only this PRC ordinance amendment. You can click on it. Now it has Q&As that they are going to periodically be adding to, and say they will be adding the information we seek to it again. What have they added so far? Well, if you look at it, look at this 6 and 7, you would think they're getting to the answer. And you see what the answer is. There are no building blocks here. They tell us that Reston Gateway, the Boston properties, would be allocated 1,710 multifamily units. We knew that because we saw their pre-filing of their application. And it doesn't, I'll get to it in another slide, that doesn't say what's around them. They have 28 acres, but there's other land that the density was increased in town center. This board over the years has consistently supported the success of Reston Town Center and the metro and mixed-use smart growth within a quarter mile and half mile of metro, especially in the town center. So the plan that implements that, the number of units, is important to us because that's something that this board might want to continue that support for. So we need to know what those numbers are. But other areas, look down at 7, outside of the town center and outside of the TSA areas, they list these are areas that I think what they're saying is justify part of this 12,257 units. We'd like to know what those are so we can analyze them, but we have a fundamental difference of opinion. I think the opinion we have here based on history is these areas that are outside the town center and Reston Town Center North, the 50 acres, and outside of the TSAs were always on that 1989 map allocated high-density residential. We always thought of town village centers as having some extra density. In fact, that is what the 3,335 units is under the existing 13 people per acre. Okay, so for these areas that are outside town center and TSA and Reston North, our theory is, until we see numbers, our theory is that's already counted in the 13. Okay, so what we should be doing is saying, okay, within the town center, within Reston Town Center North, within the TSAs, what does the plan say is the increase in units? Let's add them up. Let's see if we get 12,257. I don't think we will, but that's the information we're looking for. Let me show you why I don't think we will. This is a document, the base of it is from the comprehensive plan. My firm has overlaid from the text of the comprehensive plan, trying to put it on one document so you can see it. The residential additions that were made in this comprehensive plan. All these areas we're highlighting used to be all commercial. Okay? There were no residential uses in these particular areas. So look at it. Look at the three red ones. The three red ones, oops, I guess I got to click it to get red, don't I? Are the ones to focus on. These are PRC lands. Some of the others, all the others are not. These three are PRC lands that we know the density was increased, that to me would fit under probably, at least historically, support from this board. First one up there is Reston Town Center North. The plan says a minimum of 1,000 units. Well, that doesn't tell, what did the county assume in their transportation studies? How many did they assume in compiling the 12,000? We don't know that. We'd like to know that. I think we heard at the county's meeting on Block 7 and 8 that they were planning on 2,300 units, which is the 15 dwelling units per acre cap now. That makes sense. That, again, historically, we've been supporting that redevelopment area. But we need to know what that is. Let's just assume it's 2,300. Next to the south of that, you've got the 500 residential units. That's, again, infill and redevelopment to get that. So you add 500. You go down where Reston Gateway is. It's called on here, it's the 2,600 residential units. It's that purple area below the WNOD, the third red bubble that points between the WNOD and the toll road. That's where the Boston Properties Reston Gateway project is. Very exciting project. Soon as it gets accepted, we'll have those plans, I'm sure. The board member will have a kickoff community meeting. There's some great things going on there. It is the right place for residential growth, being that close to the metro. But that's 28 acres is only a portion of it, and there are a little less than 1,700 units is what they're asking for. So let's just count 2,600. Let's count the whole area. That adds up to 5,400. Okay, that's less than half of the 12,257 that under our theory, and again, I know we're going to be wrong. The county's going to show us where they're wrong, which is great. But I don't think it's going to add up to 12,257. So what we've been doing, and this board endorsed with its resolution last time, was trying to keep digging for this information so that the Reston community especially, and this board if it wants to, can form an opinion as to what number the 13 people per acre should be increased to. What number is reasonable? What number actually reflects what the plan added for these areas? Nothing more. So that's what we're after. The reason we're before you tonight is the county may be initiating the advertisement of this plan of this zoning ordinance text in July. That might not happen because we haven't even seen the plan text yet. But in any event, that is the time to make your comments known, because it would be good if the board didn't advertise the full range, if in fact the full range was not needed by the plan amendments, rather than waiting and the community voicing its opinion later when the public hearings come up on the ordinance amendment. The sooner you make your voice known, it's always better.
John, when in July would that be, if it were in July?
I don't know. It would be at a board meeting. It's not scheduled. I have a feeling it might lapse, but again, I don't know. We have not been privy to that, and that's the subject of conversation now between your president and the board member and your vice president. So again, that's why we're trying to push this, because it is important. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John.
So I want to go back to their answer number 7, where they were counting on the other village centers.
Make me go backwards.
It doesn't much matter. But right now, those, well, the ones I'm interested in are the ones that we have left since we lost Tall Oaks. But South Lakes, Hunters Woods, North Point. So right now, they're predominantly commercial. There is not residential there. So, but.
The plan has always been to add residential.
Right. So if today, if somebody wanted to rebuild South Lakes Village Center and add residences, what would be the current density they could go to?
Actually, they could go up to 50 dwelling units per acre.
50.
I don't think they
would
wouldn't need to go that high. If this ordinance amendment comes in, it would be unlimited. It's what the board likes.
The county board.
So we're not recommending that to you. The only change to the 50 dwelling units per acre, or actually I misspoke. I want to give county staff credit. The change to the 50 dwelling units per acre is only in the TSA area.
Okay.
But even there, that gets to be dangerous to be unlimited, because again, there are impacts that are outside of the RTC area.
So that's in TSA, but
Yeah.
currently
it's 50.
in our village centers,
50.
it's 50, and they're not proposing that that be changed.
That's correct. So that's staying the same. It's always been planned to accommodate more units. My point is that should not be on a list of justifying an increase to the populations per acre.
Because they already
really
have
is
that.
nothing more than an increase to that 3,335 units. Think of it that way rather than population. Because that's what that 3,335 should be.
So
So
John,
you
this
don't
is,
need to increase it for that.
It actually adds up exactly to that, so there's no reason to increase capacity.
Not for those village centers.
so John, I think there's a lot of information we're still seeking, where
Yes.
we still don't know a lot. And so we'd be interested to have you come back when we have that information, which hopefully is soon. For sake of time, I would like to, unless you have some awesome thing you need to tell us that's
do
going to
not.
make our day.
I do not. I thought I already did, but no, I do not.
Okay, we're not
Nothing
going to have you
further.
repeat it so I can catch it, so, okay. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Bio break?
Really? Okay, we're going to have a 5-minute bio break. 5, and I mean 5, I mean 5. We have a timer.
Now it's 4 minutes.
John, we're starting. Ray, I don't know where Ray's at. We're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back. Maybe a little bit over 5 minutes, but not too bad. Not too bad. Okay, so we are on to the Covenants Committee appeal request. So over to you, my dear.
Hi, I'm Nikki Beleza. I'm the watershed manager here at Reston Association. So I'm bringing to you the oversized vote covenants committee appeal. Basically, this is for you to move to hear the appeal, deny the appeal, or refer it back to covenants committee for more information. So the history, the black orca has been on the lake for a long time. It's 20 feet. In 2008, we took all the people that had boats that were greater than 18 feet in length. The RA deed says from 1964, the original deed says no boats greater than 18 feet in length are allowed on Reston Association lakes. So in 2008, we gathered up all the people that had 20-foot boats and we said, okay, you're in violation. Covenants Committee supported that. They said, all right, we can allow you to keep the boats as long as you own the property, but once you sell your property, it does not convey with the sale of your property, or you can't sell it to anyone else without it being shortened or removed from the lake. And Mr. Hollins, who bought the boat, he was here earlier, he's not here anymore, he bought the boat from Wally Archaean, who was the Covenants Committee, I call it grandfathered, but in violation. So he took the boat off the lake, got an estimate for how much it would cost to shorten it, decided, well, that's extreme, and put it back on the lake in the same condition it was when it left. So it's still 20 feet long. So we said, okay, well, this is in violation, and we have to take you to Covenants Committee. Covenants Committee held up the standing that he's in violation, and he appealed. And his appeal stated, why do we have the 18-foot rule? And my answer is it's in the deed. To change the deed takes a lot of work and a referendum, I believe. I don't know why it was 18 feet in the beginning, but I follow the rules, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So there's basically 3 options, right? We take it. Kate, tell me the options. Tell us the options, Kate.
So your options are to hear the appeal, and if you were to hear the appeal, you do that at the next board meeting on July the 27th. You could deny the appeal based on what you have before you, or you could refer it back to the Covenants Committee for reconsideration based on new information on the matter or for a request for additional information.
Okay.
If we hear the appeal next meeting, what then can we do?
Make a decision as to whether or not to.
Let him keep the vote or not?
As an exception?
Ken can give you the.
First, I think it's very important to point out that it is a deed requirement.
Yep.
Second of all, there was a waiver the first time to the owner who owned the boat before this individual. Not only that, but the current individual knew about the waiver. Says forth in his letter, I acquired the boat from my neighbor and I was aware of the condition of the waiver requirement to have the boat brought into compliance or removed from the lake. Fourthly, I think it's important for you all to understand that what we have is recorded restrictive covenants. Those are not favored in the law. They are strictly construed. We waived them the first time on the basis that we wanted to cooperate with our owners. You now have an owner who knew about that and has, with all due respect, thumbed his nose at the Covenants Committee and the department. At this point, if you were to do anything other than to deny it, whether it's after you hear the appeal or otherwise, you would be putting that covenant potentially into some jeopardy. If somebody else were to try to do it and you had some precedents where you gave up the right to enforce that. It takes a little bit more than that to have a waiver situation, but in my opinion, it makes it tougher for you to enforce that if, in fact, you were to grant him the exception.
That particular covenant focused on the boat length?
Is
Yes,
that-
boats except for emergencies or
Are we
associated.
setting a precedent on any other covenant if we grant?
Well, no, just
That's
except for emergencies or association authorized maintenance, no boats greater than 18 feet in overall length and 10 feet in overall width, and no boats powered by or equipped with internal combustion engines shall be allowed on the lakes, period.
And that's in the deed.
That's a deed.
David?
Well, having listened to Connie Hartke and knowing that there are a lot of people that want to speak out on this, I would make a motion that we hear the appeal.
Second.
All those in favor?
I need who was the second? I apologize.
Ray.
Ray, okay.
Oh, sorry. Take a vote.
To hear the appeal.
Hear the appeal.
Yeah.
Hear the appeal.
Unanimously,
Not unanimous.
Not unanimous.
Yeah, I
Who was
vote,
the?
I vote no.
You vote no? Okay. So everyone but you.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
And I abstain.
Can I ask a question? Would, well, let me ask you a question first,
Sure.
and then, what was the nature of the appeal of Mr. Hollins to the Governance Committee? Was it, did he ask them to change the rule? Or did he ask them to extend the, what do we call it, a special exception, special temporary exception, whatever it is? Or did he ask for his own exception?
In his appeal, or am I allowed to talk about the appeal? Well, you have it in your packet.
The
He
appeal
came
is
to
to
Governance
this
Committee
group.
and
He was
said,
brought
No,
before-
I'm sorry, in his request to the Covenants Committee, I'm sorry.
well, he was found in violation.
Right.
And he was brought in front of Governance Committee. And that's where he brought the waivers that said, oh, my neighbors don't mind having this big boat on here. Well, we brought them in violation in 2008, and since that time, those 9 owners, 4 of them have shortened their boats or taken them off the lake, so they are following through with the covenants. This is the first case where it's been sold, and the guy says, I'll take my chances, we'll see. Maybe the board will let me have
Okay.
it.
My question to you, Ken, is would, and I'm not saying that I would vote for it or urge it voted for, if we were to change the length of the boat in the deed, would that in fact be of a material nature that it would require a referendum?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's not going to happen.
So I guess I want to just say the reason for my vote no is I just think it's a deed, and it's in the deed, and he knew what he was doing when he bought it. He was brought in front of, I mean, he knew all of that when he put himself in this position, and it's in the deed. It's in the deed. So I guess I don't know, by having him come forward, it's not going to change the deed. So it's just going to be on our agenda for that. But community can come talk to us. It's already been voted on. We can move on to the next item.
Can I ask one more question?
Do you have to?
Yes, I do. So there were 9 that were,
There were original owners. Of the original owners, there are 3 left.
3 left.
And there were 9 that were brought to Covenants Committee, and now 5 votes. The 5th vote is the Adrian Hollins Black Orca. So if you don't allow it, then there would be only 4, and those are the original people that have gone to Covenants Committee. So what's happening is boats are being sold, and other people have shortened their boats and have no problem with it.
Right.
So of the original 10 granted,
9, yeah.
4 have shortened their votes.
Or taken them off the lake.
Okay. And
And the other ones are still the original owner, current owner that
so
have been.
that would be an additional 5, and then Mr. Hollins would be the 10th. Is that right?
No, he's the 9th. There were 9 total.
Oh, there, okay.
I went back and looked at the minutes from 2008, and there were a couple of 2 different motions. We had 2 residents in a different location, plus the others from Lake Chapel. So we'll look at that together later after the meeting. But I think that the information that's being brought up for the hearing in July about what the statistics were of what happened before, who has complied, come into compliance, and who remains may be important.
I would have liked to have a chance to discuss before we voted.
Okay, well, you
thus I asked the questions, because I might have voted differently.
Okay.
Madam President, since I voted for the motion, I would make a motion to reconsider.
Second.
Now I'm confused.
Did we do that?
All those
Yeah.
Okay, all those in
Reconsider.
Right.
All those in favor of reconsidering, say aye.
reconsidering, raise your hand.
To reconsider.
To reconsider the,
Yep.
okay, that passed.
Did you vote at all for it? Just, did you have a say?
I'm not going to, you
If
can
she's-
reconsider, yeah, but I've already voted.
She's
no.
in the room and she doesn't vote. She votes in the affirmative.
Madam Chairman, Madam President, in the light of the subsequent discussion, I would make a motion to deny the request.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'm strongly opposed to that. What Connie says here is common sense. It has strong support in the community. She can get much stronger support in the community, I'm sure, if she had the time to focus on it. And maybe I should be recused from this because I have a lot of issues regarding the basic way that covenants operates in general. And we fall back too much on the deed says this and the deed says that, and no, 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 and you must do this and you must do that. And I think it's a misuse of resources. We should focus on things that make sense. This seems like this boat, we wouldn't know that it's too large. Nobody would be offended by it. In fact, it seems to me, I trust Connie, as you know, I'm on Rescue Reston board with her. So that's maybe why I should be recused from this. But when she decides to speak out for the people, almost 100% of the time I think she's right. And so I trust her on this one. The paper is logical. I side with logic and common sense when it comes down to a hard and fast rule that's been around 50 years and nobody's ever looked at changing before, and then to say we need to have a referendum and throw a bunch of stumbling blocks in front of any conceivable change, no matter how much sense it makes. As you know, stumbling blocks to me can be just merely stepping stones, and in this case, I think they're merely stepping stones. I'm going to side with Connie and with Mr. Hollins, and we should at least hear what they have to say.
Any other comments, Julie?
Yeah, we really haven't talked about the option 3, which was to refer it back to the covenants for consideration on new information or matter or request for additional information. Now, having been the board liaison to the covenants, and to DRB, I do understand that there's some fine lines on what new information that would be, but somehow I feel that we are rushing into a accept or, deny or accept to hear the appeal when there may be, other than the deed saying since 1964 that a boat should only be 16 feet, and I agree that they shouldn't get a 18 feet, shouldn't get a pass because he knew that he was buying a boat that was too long. But sometimes conditions change and there might be a reason to say, well, a 20-foot boat would be okay on our lakes rather than an 18-foot that's been since 1964. We're in 2017. So
It's still in the deed.
I realize that, and I realize that a change to the deed requires a referendum. So you could, if we said, hey, there's merit to considering a change to the length, and yes, we know it would require a referendum, you could grant this person a stay of execution for 6 months to have a referendum in the general election. It's not hard to add one question about a referendum once you've gathered some additional information. In some conversations I've been in, there's been discussion about what size boats can you buy and what are the costs, but understanding there's only 5 or 6 that still need to be retrofitted, right? I think that's what I'm getting from this. I guess I'm pretty much on the fence.
Okay, any other comment? We ready to call a vote? The motion was to deny the request, and it was seconded.
Deny the appeal.
Deny the appeal. All those in favor of denying the appeal? Okay. All those opposed, meaning they would come and,
Now,
No.
you've already got, now you have to go to the.
I will go
granting
back
the
to my
appeal.
original motion.
Well, you didn't, you only recorded how many were for it, you didn't record how many were against or abstained.
How many are against it?
how many are against it?
Against denying.
Where are we now?
Against denying, meaning no
Against
contest.
denying the appeal.
We got a double negative working
Yeah,
here?
we
Yes.
do.
Yes.
So we're back to David's.
No,
No, yeah,
not quite.
Not
Yeah.
quite.
Not
We
quite.
will be in just a
Finish
moment.
This vote.
Yes.
So
Please-
you're voting
please
no
state-
to deny.
Please
Negative,
state
I want to hear what the guy has to say.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you
So-
please tell me what
That motion was to deny the appeal.
to deny the appeal?
2 were for, how many are against?
4.
4.
So that,
2
Abstain.
abstained?
Yeah, I abstain.
So now we're back to, let me again make my motion, now that I think it's back in order, and that would be to hear the appeal at the July meeting.
Second.
All in favor of that?
aye.
All
Abstain.
opposed?
One.
Back to where we were.
How about option 3?
I want to make sure that I got everybody recorded correctly. I have Sherry and John voting aye. I have Sridhar and someone else
Julie.
abstaining.
Julie.
I abstain.
Okay.
From the deny motion.
No, for the deny motion,
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and everyone else voted nay. David, and seconded by Ray, went back to here. The only abstention was Julie. Sherry voted no. Everybody else voted aye.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
So what are we doing? Are we hearing the appeal?
Hearing the appeal.
Okay, on to mid-year amendments to CEO goals. So that was all obviously in our packet. It was a combination. We did this, so goals are set in the fall under the old board. And so a new board comes in and we looked at the goals. We had some changes that we wanted to make based on things that have changed. And in lots of corporations across America, you do a mid-year review because things change. And so that's what we did. Incorporated, I think, everybody's comments to the best that we could. And so now we just have to agree that that's the direction that we agree on these goals for Kate for the remainder of the year. So I make a motion. Can I make a motion? I make a
Can I
motion
move
that
to
we.
accept these goals?
Entertain a motion.
Can I entertain a motion?
Move to accept the goals as amended.
A second.
Discussion? Call for a vote. All those in favor of the goals? Unanimous. Okay, now we're back. Now we're on to David. You're going to talk about our legal services and what we're kind of doing in that realm.
Yes, you had put together, Madam President, a committee to look into legal services consisting of yourself, me, and Mike Sanyo. And we also included in the discussions the executive director. And it came to light that having in-house counsel, which is part of what's going to be recommended, was not exactly something new. Back in 1991, RA did have in-house counsel in the guise of Paula Goldberg. Paula left, and I'm not quite sure what transpired then, although there was not a replacement named or made part of the staff. The decision was to go outside counsel. And at the time, I think that Lori Dolson, who continues to practice law, in fact, I saw her just a couple days ago, she came on to take care of collections, and covenants litigation was taken over by Segan, Mason and Mason. And that's where it's been from the standpoint of having outside counsel. Right now, covenants enforcement and collections are done by Ken's law firm, and of course we have outside counsel for land use in the form of John McBride from Oden, Feldman, and Pittleman. It occurred to us, and I certainly feel I have a lot of experience in this, having been in the county attorney's office, and seeing how savings can be made by having inside counsel as opposed to hiring law firms. Sometimes you do need law firms, specialty work, but a lot can be done that is currently being handled by outside counsel with a person in-house. We're talking about one individual who would report to the board and to the executive director. We're not talking about more than one or a big staff. I think they would be, the person would be sharing Sabrina for assistance. And there are quite a few things, both in the land use area and in the covenants area, both enforcement and collection, that can be done in-house. In addition, there are a lot of things that go on a day-to-day basis in which having the benefit of an in-house counsel as opposed to going outside can be quick, and it can be efficient, and it can be economical. And I think that in addition to that, there are some contractual contracting matters that can be handled by this person. One of the difficulties in the past has been that people that have been looked at for this kind of work, they do not have community association experience. And so the proposal would be, and I'll get to reading what the actual proposal is, would be to have someone that comes from that kind of sort of pool of lawyers out there that would have sensitivity to what we're doing in the Reston Association. And with that, I would make a motion that we would include in the 2018-2019 operating budget a new staff position of in-house counsel with oversight of all legal functions with reporting authority to the RA board and the CEO. And secondly, to send out a competitive bid request among area community association legal firms for the specialty trades of collections and covenants enforcement services for consideration by a 4-member panel comprised of 3 board of directors and the CEO. And before I ask for a second to that, let me just point out that it has been a number of years since we last put out for bidding the collections and covenant enforcement work, and we just think that it's just a good thing to do from a fiduciary standpoint to go out for an RFP, and that would be my motion, Madam Chairman.
Second.
How much is this person going to cost?
Let me ask Kate to comment on that. What she has in mind at this point?
It's a good question. I think, you're looking anywhere in the range between 150 and 185.
Salary.
Yes.
Plus benefits.
Possibly.
I mean, until you have it fully loaded with the,
Correct.
right, the benefits.
150 and how much?
185.
About 185.
And I'll defer to Kate because she has a good feel for people in the community association community. I will say that I would think that this would be a very attractive position for someone who may not necessarily come from that background, but may have the ability to learn it, but who might have a background in collections or work with covenants or zoning or some land use experience as a sort of a generalist. And I think that you might.
Position?
This is a full-time position. I think it could be.
What factors, benefits do we add to this number?
Well, let me just say that I think it could be done for less than 150,000. I'm just not sure how much less.
Yeah, I would think we'll get somebody for less than 150. They can learn these things. They can learn about the things that they don't know, and we always have the outside expertise if we need it. But for benefits, I would throw in 25% as an add-on if we.
So I guess that's what I thought I was asking, was if I was putting this into my budget planning, that I'm going to do it over the next couple months, and I'm kind of also looking at Melissa back there. A fully loaded, I thought that's what the 185 kind of represented. I'm not suggesting that we're putting out information into the public saying, well, we know we're going to pay you 150.
I want to be mindful that this is the salary discussion is
Right.
not necessarily the best one to have here.
Right, no,
Yes.
And I think that
Agreed.
what Melissa and I, if the board so approves this, would definitely work with a firm to help us find the right candidate. Again, when that pool of candidates is identified, we would be going back to the board and having a conversation. But she's done some research, and she's already got a firm identified and queued up. And if this is something that the board chooses to do, we would begin now, because we want to take the full amount of time to make the selection and get a good idea for the number that we need to put in the 2018-19 budgets, so that we have an idea of both salary and benefits. But I would respectfully request that we hold on having what is that number right now at this moment in
You
time.
want me to approve a position in the budget without having any clue as to what the number is going to be?
One of the things that was important, I know with the discussion that I had with the three-member panel, is how much are we spending on legal now? Kind of historically, what has it been looking like? And that ranges anywhere between $600,000 and $700,000 a year. And we have been served well by Chadwick Washington, and hope that we continue to be served well going forward with some of the other matters. But the fact of the matter, and Ken has heard me say this, your senior leadership team will espouse this. I can tell you that today it would have been nice to have had someone next to me as we were preparing for the board meeting and the questions that we had, as well as running the organization. Oh, yes, so I could focus on some other matters. But the day-to-day, there are questions that come up throughout the day that have nothing to do with a board meeting that have increased over time. Ken is wonderful and available when he can be, and is fairly quick at turnaround. But there's nothing like walking next door or down the hall to say, can you look at this? We had it when I started with the organization many years ago, and it's time to go back to that. Not that we're not going to need the expertise, in the industry. We will, but it's time, and I do believe there will be a cost savings to the organization.
You'll have to excuse me, I'm coming in from the bleachers here. I know there's been a lot of discussion behind the scenes on this. I know it's already been lined up, and I know it's basically a thing that I'm supposed to raise my hand and say aye, aye. But I've been out of the loop. And we are in a budget where everybody wants me to lower assessments. And I know the biggest factor in our budget is personnel and related costs. And last year we added 6 more people in the department out of the middle of nowhere. Just all of a sudden, wow, this would be nice to have and it would be helpful. Let's hire this guy and 5 more people with him. Now we're doing it again. Well, when does it end? When do we ever lay something back? When do we ever see a major reorganization? We're just continuing to add and add and add and add. I come from a nightmarish situation in my past of seeing the bureaucracy of having in-house counsel too. We end up hiring somebody on the outside anyway. But you can't trust your in-house people, and they do. Add staff, all of a sudden you have one person. Then they need a secretary, or whatever you would call that position these days. I don't mean to offend anybody. And then you need a paralegal. And before you know it, you've got 5 people in the department. Before you know it, you have 8 people in the department. When right now, we have the ability to hire anybody we want to. We can hire or fire Ken tomorrow. We know what he can do. His name is well known out there. There are ways to reduce the amount we pay him. He's here for the number of hours because we ask him to be here for these number of hours. The job that Mr. McBride does, it's amazing. You saw it tonight. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to reduce those hours. So if you're going to tell me we're going to hire somebody who's going to substitute some of the McBride hours or some of the Chadwick hours, please, then you're not going to get somebody who's as good as they are. You're just not. And you're not going to get somebody who we have the power over, the flexibility over, how many hours they work and when they work and how they work it. And if it's a little inconvenient that you'd like to knock on the guy's door and be among 5 or 6 other people on your staff that needs an opinion from in-house legal staff, well, it's a little inconvenient. But I found both Ken and John extremely responsive. And John, I know very well with the Rescue Reston days too, so I'll speak twice for him. He's extremely responsive, extremely competent. And what are you going to get outside? You say, well, we can do it for this. We keep driving the price down like that's the answer. Legal help is not cheap. And I go back to divorce lawyer. Well, I'm going to pay $150 an hour, and I'm going to pay $300, and the person you're hiring for $300 an hour is so much better at doing it and so much more quickly and efficiently that you're far and away better off hiring that person. But we go by the hourly rate. Oh, I'm going to hire the person with the lowest hourly rate. What are we going to get here? An ex-JAG officer or similar? I mean, we're not going to get a top-flight lawyer because they're already hired. They're already working at a good firm. They're already making more money, and they have a more stable position than a position that's going to rely on the vagaries of annual budget discussions like we're having now at RA. You're not going to get the same quality of person. And we're going to increase the amount of staffing. We're going to increase personnel costs at a time when the public is asking us to reduce that, rightfully so. And we're not making any moves in any other departments anywhere. If somebody leaves RA, immediately we replace the same person in the same position, whether it makes sense or not. This is all facts. These are realities. Sorry if it offends anybody. It's reality. We have to face reality. You can't say, well, this would be nice to have, so let's go hire them. And I'm sorry, and it doesn't have to be Ken. For rebidding the positions, I'm okay with that. If there's 2 other great legal firms that can do it more efficiently than Ken's doing it, fine, I'm all ears, bring them to me. But to tell me we're going to stick somebody in-house and you're never going to get rid of them, never going to control them, they're just going to be another employee, and that's how I see this all going. Now, nobody's had any discussions with me to say that everything I'm saying doesn't make any sense. Maybe that would have been good, but I may not have another chance to express it. So I'm expressing it here and now, and to say that this is a big budget savings is just false. This is just false savings we're talking about. This had nothing to do with the budget issue, and I don't know what is really behind it. We're not going to save a dime on this as far as the budget is concerned. And if we push it far enough, the quality of legal help is going to go down, not up. Thank you. And thank you for, I know both of you guys catch a lot of heat. I know I do too, so a lot of times with, John McBride works his butt off and he does a great job. I know that. And so does Ken. A lot of times he does things that people disagree with, including me, as he knows. But they are well-known, excellent professionals in their field. They don't go hiding in corners. They don't ignore phone calls. They're good people. I want to see us continue to hire from the outside. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Victoria?
To be clear, just a bit of clarity for me, would in-house counsel serve at the pleasure of the board, the pleasure of the CEO, or a combination thereof?
Can I answer that? So they would be serving at the pleasure of the board.
Okay.
In coordination with the CEO.
Okay.
Day-to-day, what we need.
Day-to-day would be CEO, but
They would
generally
report to
at the
the board.
pleasure of the board. And the other thing is that, also to be clear, you're not saying that we're getting rid of all of our external counsel. You're saying very clearly, as with any corporation, you have in-house counsel who goes out and hires external counsel as necessary. And we've already identified that we probably need external counsel to continue land use issues
absolutely do.
and collections, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And there are savings. John McBride's firm, they're doing things now that with in-house counsel, they would not be doing, and would not be charging us for. The same would be true with Ken's firm. So, you know, I think that it's not all about the money. It's also about the availability and just having that corporate memory and being able to do some things that John's firm and Ken's firm do not do for us right now, that we might have to hire other outside counsel to do. And we can develop that expertise in-house. Let me just, I know we're way over time at this point. Several years ago, the school board became very concerned because they had Hunt and Williams virtually doing all of their work, one of the 2 or 3 premier firms in Virginia. And they were charging them well over $2 million a year. And they decided enough's enough. We got to take this in-house. So they at the time had one person. They staffed up with 2 or 3 in-house, and they have and the county attorney's office assisted them also with some discrete tasks that we didn't charge them for, and they saved a ton of money. So, you know, there are savings that are there, but I think that the accessibility to have an in-house counsel right down the hall from you is invaluable.
So are we ready to vote?
Yeah, I'm on the budget committee of FCPS. I know that. I've looked at those expenses. So
Can we call for a vote?
concur.
I want to make a motion that we change this from an action item to a discussion item and take action on it next meeting. Because I, for one, have not been privy to any of this. I'm admitting that everything I just said could be totally incorrect, but I don't think so. And it's certainly worth a discussion. And if people are going to have a lot of behind-the-scenes discussions on how to go with this stuff and lay something on the table for a vote, I want to be part of those discussions.
Well, we
That's
already
my motion.
have a motion.
My motion is we change this from an action item to a discussion item.
We already
have a
have
motion on the
So we have
table.
a motion on the floor.
And without a second, it doesn't go anywhere.
Can I've not heard any of this either. I mean, I trust the legal committee has done this, and I will take the legal committee's recommendation. So, but I've had no conversations about this at all.
Nor
From
I.
anybody.
Nor I.
The
Not at
only
all.
conversation I've had
Yeah.
was
Nor
the idea
have
that
I.
we would do it.
Yeah.
Like, as in, generally look into the
Yeah.
idea. That is all I know.
Yeah, I've not heard a thing about it.
And so hence why we have committees and why we spend time in committees, so you can get the expertise and people are diving deep in certain areas, so everybody on the board doesn't have to do everything. So I appreciate the vote of confidence, Eric, in the legal team
Trust you guys.
that we set up. And
Madam President, voting to go out to advertise the position does not compel us, does not obligate us to hire
correct.
anyone.
Yeah.
That's correct.
If we find no one suitable, we do not have to do
This
it.
is just a motion to allow Kate to go out and do this very thing, to float the posting.
As I read the board motion, which is what I believe in my
It's right there.
package, is what David has proposed. That motion was to include in our budget a new staff position and to do a competitive bid on the collections and covenants enforcement area. And that's all you've asked us to vote on tonight. I don't think that it says that we have said we're going to absolutely hire. It says that we are including in our budget so that we can understand further what that might cost and to allow Melissa and Kate to do some further research. Is that the way I interpret
Yes.
your motion?
Doesn't include going out to secret.
Then I would second your motion.
Well, it's already been seconded by.
You want to move the call to
Yeah, I
question?
seconded it.
Oh, I did not hear that.
Trying to
Judy.
make
I
for a call vote.
apologize.
Kate?
I'm trying to have a mental conversation with Melissa, but I haven't gotten my telepathy down yet. I'm 2 pieces. It doesn't say in the motion that we can begin the process to look. And Ken
Right,
kind of
that's-
chimed in. And then I was thinking, if we begin the looking process, is it, how do I want to say it, false advertising?
I think you have to wait until it's in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know, it's going to cut your lead time down, but you're not talking about hiring anyone until January 1st.
Right.
And so what we would get from saying yes to this motion is we would get the data that we need in order to put it in the budget to see how it fits.
But if it's in the budget, you have to have a number, and you just told me you didn't want to give me a number. I don't get it.
Well, we didn't want to discuss a salary discussion in terms, it went out, but I understood that Melissa and Kate have begun to do some basic research, so you have a ballpark of what it might be. Okay. And I don't think we end up budgeting to the penny, so.
Then what's the ballpark?
We've.
Do you have a ballpark? I was on target. Okay. You heard the ballpark.
Right.
I also want to be mindful that there's got to be, in my mindset, that position wouldn't start until January. However, there's got to be a buffer of helpful transition. I've got to budget dollars for, some knowledge transfer to get that individual up and running. With some opportunity for reach out in case I've slept at a Holiday Inn Express, but I would rather have yes, but, being able to touch. So that's something that would be incorporated also into the budget process. So, okay, I understand. Based with this, I got what I need. If you were to vote yes, I've got what I need in order to put numbers together.
So quick comment.
Quick.
This is an exploration, basically. That's all we're going to do. We have money sitting in the budget for outside counsel, which is about 700,000 or something. So we don't have to necessarily pull something, allocate something today. We have dollars sitting there for outside counsel, so we can pull out of that and plug right into a new position when we are ready for the budget. I don't think we are ready for that anyway. It's going to take many, many more months. And by the time we'll know where this process is going to go. So I would say that, this is an exploration. Let's move forward and find out what we can get. Yes.
Erwin, do you want to take a quick comment?
Yes, just a very quick comment. If the motion.
To get over there.
Take up. Identify yourself.
Erwin Flashman, 1327 Buttermilk Lane.
Thank you.
The motion, as it reads, or at least as I read it, and I heard Mr. Bobson read it, says that the position would respond to both the board and the CEO. A lawyer cannot serve two masters. He may coordinate with someone, but he serves only one master. As soon as he serves two masters, he has two loyalties. He cannot. And I would suggest that he serve the board and coordinate with the CEO.
Yeah, I think
That
that was
language
our
should be
intention.
changed, because otherwise you'll have problems.
We could modify the motion.
Could we accept a friendly amendment for it to read, with reporting authority to the RA board in coordination with the CEO?
It's hard line and dotted line, basically.
Like, this is going to be somebody sitting in the office that everybody you see here on these staffs, every time they have a legal question, is going to feel like, I'm going to knock on the person's door and sit down and get an appointment and talk about them. To say that this hire serves the board first and only, like Erwin is suggesting it should happen, it ain't going to happen that way. The reality is it won't happen that way. And there's too many questions right now to have this thing rammed through in a vote tonight. 4 of us have already said we heard nothing about any of it coming in. I'd like to know more before I vote on something of this importance. This is a hugely important thing to vote on. And it should be just, for now, changed to a discussion item. Period. Thank you for your input, Erwin.
Okay, so we have a motion and a friendly amendment on the table.
Let me just.
Do we have a friendly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was, and that was
In coordination with, so I made that, I got it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say, in response to you, Orrin, that when I was county attorney, the county executive and I were the only 2 people in the government that served at the pleasure of the Board of Supervisors. So that was my employer, but yet, on a daily basis, I was dealing with the county executive and all the agency directors and everybody else.
Of course.
So to get to Victoria's point though, and I think it was a good point, serving at the pleasure of the board, and you're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, that's the point.
Of course, and because that's the way it is
And that's
now.
the way it's,
Right.
that's the friendly amendment, and that's what
Yes,
we're gonna.
that's exactly right, yes.
Responsibility is to the board.
Right.
Yeah.
not to the
Always.
executive
Yes.
or the-
Always has been.
And they
Yeah.
work with a lot of people.
Yep,
Okay, so we just kind of clear the deck and say, we have a motion on the table
Right.
with a friendly amendment. So now the motion reads, to include in the 2018-19 operating budget, a new staff position, in-house counsel with oversight of legal functions with reporting authority to the RA
every
board in coordination with the CEO.
CEO,
And as number 2 stands.
right.
Provided that this doesn't increase the overall personnel costs in the next budget.
So that's the motion on the table. Can we call for a vote?
Call the question.
Okay, all in favor of the motion with friendly amendment?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed. There's going to be very heavy budget discussions regarding personnel costs. The percentage was what, 2/3 already of the budget?
Usually it's.
And we fiddle around with cutting a service here and cutting a service there, yet we can't replace a single employee.
Moving on.
Yet we can add, forget it, doesn't make any sense, you all get my point.
Okay, so we're now on to item M, going into executive session to discuss short-term rentals and how to address that, how we want Mayo to address that. We can. So I need a motion to go in executive session.
Madam President, I move that we go into executive session to discuss with legal counsel governing document options to address short-term rentals.
All those in favor?
Aye. Forgive me, who seconded?
Like 4 people.
Victoria.
She did.
I'll pick Victoria.
Pick one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go into executive session.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, coming out of executive session, I move that the Reston Association Board of Directors certifies to the best of each member's knowledge that only those matters appropriate for executive session were heard, discussed, or considered by the board during executive session.
Second.
All those in agreement?
Aye. Objection? Good.
Let me just give you a little update on the Trails Edge Lane situation. We got in touch with Jack Want, who is the head of code compliance for the county. We had the assistance of the supervisor's office because she had already been in contact with code compliance about the matter, but they have opened up a case, and I got a report from Jack yesterday saying that the owner was taken to court by the county attorney's office, and I'm assuming that it was circuit court because he was found to be in violation of the zoning ordinance for unpermitted construction and was fined $1,000. And they are preparing another case to go to court that will focus on multiple dwelling units on the property. So it appears that they're not going after the fact that there would be 4 unrelated people at one time or a family in 2. They're going the other route, which is more specific to construction and to having multiple dwellings. Now, the next step for me is to get back to the county attorney's office to talk to the attorney that was actually handling the matter to get all of the details. Again, I assume it was in circuit court because of the $1,000 fine, and then to find out where they're going to be filing this next one and just what his prognosis is. So we're making progress on the county front. That's all I got.
Thank you. Would it be appropriate, or have we already reported to the neighbors? Would that be appropriate?
Let me do this. Let me talk to the county attorney's office, get more of the details, and then I can certainly get with the executive director, and maybe we can send something to the neighbors.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Although I'm sure they're all watching right now.
That's all good stuff.
They're all watching right now.
Thank you. And I also have to report that one of the people that was in the audience at the last board meeting that was rightfully disturbed by all of this ends up being an owner who was a friend of my younger son, and he used to skateboard in my backyard and actually had sleepovers at my house, unbeknownst to me. Well, I knew it at the time, but I didn't know that he was now at Trails Edge.
Davis, yeah.
That's great, David. Thank you for working on that. Any other items, or are we ready to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Raise your hand, John. Raise your hand, raise your hand. Okay.
Raise it high.
Doing work.
Good job, everybody.
Only 15
Yeah.
minutes over.